let's get nasty. Is that right, Marshy? Let's get nasty on a Wednesday. That's how it's opened up all the time with Anthony Stalter. Am I right?
You are correct, Dan.
This is the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. I'm Danny Mack. That's Andrew Marsh. Marshy celebrated his 28th birthday yesterday, and we will be with you until 5:30 tonight, and then it's NCAA tournament coverage here on 101 ESPN. Okay, you tune in, you say, what the hell are these guys doing here? And the reason being is that, well, Jamie Rivers is flying with the team to Ottawa. Anthony Stalter is on vacation to Florida. CD is not playing with a full voice, so he's out. Mike Ryder, our executive producer, is going to be leaving soon because he's not feeling well. So we have the bottom of the barrel that they're reaching for us, buddy. So here we are.
Come on, Dan.
It's the way it goes, man.
We got Bradford giving us a compliment before the show started. I think we're going to have a good show today.
So the text line is wide open. We want to hear from you on the various topics that we get into today. 314-399-9646, 314-399-9646. I do this show, though, with a heavy heart, and I mean that sincerely. We had to put down our wonderful dog today. We have 3 dogs. We had to put down our oldest, Hank, and so I was an emotional wreck about 2 hours ago saying goodbye to my dog, and I'm sure there's people in the audience that have had to do that. I don't know if you've ever had to do that, Marshy, but it's gut-wrenching, man. It was sad. I was very, very sad. So, Hank, I love you, and I'm going to miss you.
I have not had to do that, but I know people that have, much like yourself, and it is sad. I mean, that's man's best friend, right? Dogs are awesome, and so hopefully the text line can provide us a few laughs today. We'll talk some sports and hopefully just have a good show.
All right, looking forward to it. We're going to start with the Blues. They fall to the Avalanche last night, 4-3. Couple things stand out to me just right off the bat, Marshy, and number one was the penalty called on Carey.
Oh, yeah.
That was huge.
It was.
It was huge. It was a difference maker in the game, and then the giveaway by Buchnevich. I'm not sure where he's going with that pass. I'm not sure. In the moment, he had an easy play in front of him, didn't take it, tried to go cross ice, gets picked off, turns out to be in the back of the net, and that's your game. Those 2 plays for me were kind of summarized the entire game last night.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, like, Jordan Kyrou ends up dropping his stick, and then he has to trail back towards the net. Colton Parayko, I believe, was the intended target of that pass, but there was a Colorado Avalanche player just standing right there in the vicinity. Brandon Saad was wide open, and, I mean, you learn from a young age to make simple plays and go up the boards. Don't make plays towards the middle of the ice if you don't have to. And like you said, that was ultimately the difference in the game.
Okay, do they make the playoffs? I am curious what fans think. They've got, 13 games left. By my calculations, they would have to go to probably 10-3, 11-2. They do have winnable games. I mean, it starts tomorrow night with Ottawa. That's a winnable game. Then you have a huge game with Minnesota. I like how the Blues match up with them. And then you've got the big one in Vegas. If you win the 2 games that you have coming up, you got Monday night against Vegas, and that will be maybe your season right there. I know that's making it a little much probably when you're only 4 points back, but put it in the context of what you have left and who you're chasing, might be the biggest game of the year.
Well, what I will say is we owe Tampa Bay a huge thank you last night for beating the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Blues still remain in the hunt. They don't lose any ground with Vegas, that is. But I thought even though they lost last night, I liked the way they played. I thought there was an intensity to it. It felt like a playoff game. I was in my seat, dialed in the entire time, and it's a type of game that I think if they can carry that throughout the remainder of the season, I do think they can make the playoffs. I really do. That's a good team that they just played.
Jordan Bennington's got to be awesome down the stretch.
He was pretty good last night.
He was okay. But he was better than okay. He was solid. Yeah. He was good. But he's going to have to steal you games. I mean, they're inconsistent watching them on a night in and night out basis that if he's not on his game is over, in my opinion. That is what he does for this team. He's given them a chance to be even in the conversation for the playoffs.
Yeah. And Joel Hofer, too. Joel Hofer has been playing great down the stretch as well. I do think that they found something in that first line. I really like Jake Neighbors being brought up to that first line with Braden Shin and Robert Thomas. I mean, immediately you could see the impact that line had. I mean, they went down and scored. Jake Neighbors finds Braden Shin, puts it in the back of the net. I thought the fourth line looked great. It was just that second line. If that second line can figure something out and not play the way they did last night, I think they have a great opportunity, along with what you said about Jordan Binnington stealing games. If they can find their game and keep playing the way that they have these past 5 games, I think they have a really good shot at least making it close.
Legit question here. Did you think it was a penalty on Carey?
So at first I thought, just from as the play went on, I was like, oh man, like I don't know if I like that. And then I saw the replay from a different angle. He stuck his leg out. He did. It was a good call.
I'm in the same boat. Initially I thought, no, that's not a penalty. But here's the thing. You're going to miss calls throughout a hockey game. It's just the nature of the business, and you can't put yourself in that position to where you're trying to go for that type of play, and they called for a penalty at that spot in the game. It just cannot happen.
And I thought Carey did not have a particularly great game last night.
Me neither.
I could tell. I believe it was the first period. I think he toe picked right around the offensive blue line, and the team went off sides, and from that moment, I'm just like, he's the type of player that if he just gets in his own head, he gets in his own way. And I felt that the entire night. I didn't think that he was strong on the boards. I thought there were some plays where he got out-muscled. But you have more games left, and he has an opportunity to bounce back and be the player that everyone expects him to be.
Okay, so the Blues not playing until tomorrow night. They'll be at Ottawa. We'll have the game pregame at 5 here on 101 ESPN. The Cardinals take on the Nationals. It's a little bit later tonight. The lineup is Victor Scott in center field. Dylan Carlson is in right. He'll bat second. Matt Carpenter is your designated hitter. Quietly has had an okay spring. Wilson Contreras will bat cleanup. He's your catcher. Alec Burleson getting the start in left. Thomas Sajaci is at third base. He's had an interesting camp. I think this guy can hit.
Now, I think he can, yeah.
Trying to figure out where you're going to play him is going to be the rub here, is where is he going to play in the infield. But he can hit, and he's shown that here in spring training. Alfonso Rivas is at first base. Jose Fermin at short. Cesar Prieto is at second base. And Steven Matz, one of his final tune-ups for tonight. We're going to get into the Cardinals for much of this show. It is 2:08 here in St. Louis, and a lot of the texts are coming in saying, well, everything you guys just said, it all relies on Binnington. Look, we're not saying everything relies on Binnington, but to me, if you're going to get into the playoffs, he's the number one reason why you do.
Oh, absolutely. And I was wondering this, what do you think is the best route for the Blues? Do you think them playing in the Pacific, going that route, is better than playing either the Avalanche, the Jets, the Stars? Like, which route would you prefer them to be in? Because at this point, the last wild card spot is pretty much the one you're playing for, because the way Nashville's playing, there's no way you're going to get that spot.
What is it, 15 in a row they've recorded a point now?
Something like that. They're playing, and it's all started against the Blues.
That Saturday afternoon game against the Blues, in which the Blues needed to win that game and didn't, and it jump-started the Nashville Predators, and Ryan O'Reilly was big in the final 10, 15 minutes of that game. Yeah, that was tough on St. Louis, undoubtedly. Here's my thing. Just get in. And
you don't care who they play.
I don't care. Just get in. And the ceiling for me, and I've been saying this for months, is that if you got to a second round series somehow, some way, that was like the ceiling for me. That would have been okay. That is not a great year, but it's a good year with the bunch that you had and what you're dealing with the Berube firing and the Carey comments, the fact that Binnington probably and Hofer got you into the playoffs. So, a lot of positives to take away from what has been a consistently inconsistent season.
I feel like if they play the way that they did last night, which I thought, even though they lost, I thought it was a much better game than what we saw against Anaheim, at least for the first half of that game. That was a playoff game last night to me. And you played a really good Colorado Avalanche team, and you were hanging with them. I mean, you had a lead. And you blew it, but that was, in my opinion, what you need to see from this team, minus a few mistakes, if they're going to make a playoff run. And if they do make the playoffs, if they play like that, I think they could beat somebody in the first round, especially with Jordan Binnington.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he'd be the difference in looking at that. I'm trying to call up the Blues schedule here very quickly, and they've got Ottawa coming up. They've got Minnesota. You got the Vegas Golden Knights. Then you have Calgary, San Jose. All winnable games. Edmonton Oilers, that'll be a tough game. Nashville will be a tough game. You got San Jose again. Anaheim Ducks should win those games. You got the Hawks still left. You got the Hurricanes, the Kraken, and then the Dallas Stars. 6 of the final 13, I believe, are at home, or 8 of the final 13, maybe that sounds right, are at home. But over half of them are at home, and they've actually been a pretty good home team.
They have.
So I give him credit in that regard. It is 2:11. It is the fast lane. Hopefully I'm not getting what Carey Davis and Jamie Rivers have. Marshy, just give me a few hours. We'll get through this.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get through this. 314-399-9646. And that is the text line. A lot of texts coming up. We'll get into the Cardinals and the pros and cons of having Victor Scott on your opening day roster. This is the fast lane on 101 ESPN.
It's time to fly down to Florida for a spring training report on 101 ESPN.
Presented by E&B Granite, Brooke, Jamie, Curbs, and Bernie Federko's choice for countertops and cabinets.
Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. I'm Danny Mac. That's Marshy over there. And Jamie Rivers traveling with the Blues. He'll be in Ottawa tomorrow. We'll have that game here on 101 ESPN and the pregame at 5, I believe. Stalter is on vacation, so he's down in Florida taking in the sun. And CD is hit a little bit under the weather, so he's out for today, and he'll be with you tomorrow. Okay, we teased this. What are the pros and cons of having Victor Scott on the opening day roster? Number one, I want to see him. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's for entertainment value and speed and trying to generate something with his legs. I want to see him. I just want to see the kid play. You know, there hasn't been a lot of games that have been shown so far, and you got to go back and look at some of the highlights and, you know, all those kind of things that to get a chance to see him. Like I saw yesterday, he had a diving catch in center.
Oh, that was so sick.
And he's a Gold Glover.
He is.
In the minor leagues. Bats from the left side. I think he's got a little bit more power than people expect. I bet he grows into it as we get along here. So those are some of the pros. So some of the cons, I would say this. He's played in 63 games, I believe, at AA. So he's never played at AAA. You're asking him to take a significant jump. It's not unheard of. People do it all the time.
We saw it with Jordan Walker.
Michael A. Taylor, or Michael Harris. Michael Harris with the Braves. So it's been done. And the other part is, what do you do when Tommy Edman and Lars Nootbaar come back? Because
that's a big question.
When this kid plays, he's got to be in the lineup. And you can't have those guys get healthy and then all of a sudden he sits. And I'm curious what the text line feels like. Do you want to see this kid right away, or are you taking more of a pragmatic approach with Victor Scott being in center field? What do you think, Marshy? What would you do?
I think there's two ways to look at this, and I have to split them up. I have my personal belief in wants, and I want to see Victor Scott, but I completely understand why he would not make the team because of exactly what you just said. With Tommy Edman and Lars Nootbaar, you already have, you have Dylan Carlson, who is obviously playing a lot better than he was earlier in spring training, and he's been on the team. And so I feel like you would essentially have to put him in, and then you have Alec Burleson out there as well, who was on the team last year, and he's slimmed down. He's a little bit more fleet of foot in the outfield. But man,
Brendan Donovan would be another choice.
Donovan, I don't know how they want to play that though with his arm and whatnot, but I just want to see him. I just want to see him. I want to see something different. I want to see speed. I like seeing. I'm excited for Mason Wynn too, because he brings that element as well. I don't like the whole 3 true outcomes anymore. It's just boring to me. I want to see speed. I want to see guys who are lasering the ball in from the outfield or at shortstop. I just want to see this youth movement, because last year it didn't work, and I want to see something different.
Defense,
bottom line.
Yeah, defense up the middle could be pretty good. I think Contreras is going to have a better year behind the plate, because at times it couldn't get any worse.
Right.
So it's going to be better than it was a year ago. I fully believe that. I think Mason Wynn with his arm is exciting to watch. And so it's short up the middle. You seem to be solid there, even if his bat isn't there, which I'm taking a cautious approach with him, what he does offensively. But as long as that doesn't carry over to his defense, then you should be fine there. I love Brendan Donovan at second base, and I think people overlook just how good analytically Tommy Edman was in center.
He was good.
He was really good in center field for an outfield that was well below average on the majority of metrics that you look at defensively. He was actually well above some of those numbers that you look at. So I just want to see this team play fundamentally sound too. I mean, people ask me all the time, what do you think the keys to the season are? And they start asking about Jordan Walker or Wynn or Victor Scott. And I go back to this. One, They got to be healthy. And 2, they have to get back to playing fundamentally sound baseball. They just were not a fundamentally sound team last year. And I mean things like stealing bases. And a lot of times situation dictates that when you run. When you're down 5-0, you're not going to run. And they were down early in a lot of games last year. But going first to third, playing solid defense, making routine plays. I mean, all those things kind of crept in on the other side last year, and that's what made it such a down season.
Is it such a bad thing to start the season off with Victor Scott as your center fielder, and then when Tommy Edman is ready and you make sure that he's 100% ready to go, you send him down, and then maybe you bring him back up later in the year for a playoff push, get some more speed back, and then let him develop? Is that a bad idea?
No, I don't think it is at all, especially when you think about where they're opening up in the National League West.
Yeah.
Dodger Stadium is huge. It's vast. San Diego, Petco Park is vast. So you've got that. I also think he brings an energy to the club.
Yeah.
You know, he's gonna energize the fan base. Now, part of that is he's got to get on base. I mean, you can't steal first. So he's got to get on first base and then let his legs take over the game. But it's really interesting. I mean, last year, his success rate in stealing bases was 87%. And if you include the Arizona Fall League, Marshy had 113 stolen bases.
That's insane.
So you look at his minor league totals last year, couple that with Arizona Fall League, 113 stolen bases. You can't overlook that. That's something that you have to look at. And I don't want to hear about starting his clock and figuring a spot for the 40-man. If he's good enough to be here, then bring him up.
I just wonder if he can translate his offense to the major league level, because if he's not getting on base, then you kind of have a problem, because that's exactly what he is designed to do. Yes, the defense will be great and whatnot, and I feel confident that he will do a great job in center field if he does start the year off with the team. I also wouldn't mind if he just bunted. I feel like he can outrun.
Just put it in play.
Just put it in play. I saw Jackson Holiday hit a ball up the middle.
Yes.
And beat it out yesterday.
It's incredible, some of these young stars that are in the game, and Victor Scott is one of them. In talking with some people that are not around the ball club, but just they're around Major League Baseball, and I was asking them about Jackson Holiday was the first guy I asked about. And a couple individuals said, we've been in Baltimore's camp, and you wouldn't believe how well-versed he is in terms of not only being a major league talent and what he's doing on the field, but how he collects himself with the media, handles himself with the media. Everybody's coming at him. He's always very generous with his time. They say he's ready. He's the real deal. And then the other player they bring up is Victor Scott. And this is unsolicited. You know, they say, we can't wait to see this kid. They're like, he's going to be on the Cardinals, right? And I said, well, don't know yet. We're still trying to figure this thing out. Injuries may dictate whether he's up or not. But I would dangle, if I'm Ollie, I'm dangling that carrot. I'm not saying whether or not he's going to make the team until the very end. So I see everything. Keep pushing him. I also want to see him at the tail end of spring training face some of the top pitchers that are, instead of working on pitches like a Kyle Gibson did yesterday and he got roughed up, he was working on his cutter. It just wasn't where it needed to be, and Jazz Chisholm hit a bomb off him, and that's the way it goes. You know, a guy like Kyle Gibson knows he's going to be in the starting rotation and not fighting for his spot. But in that final start, and you're going to start to see this next week, where you're going to be facing, if you're a pitcher, major league lineups, and if you're a hitter, you're facing major league pitchers that are going to be going 5 or 6 innings, and then they're going to play a couple of games as if it's opening day.
Right.
You'll have an opening day lineup. You'll see your starter get through 5 or 6. After that, it's playing it like it's the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th. So you're going to start seeing these games, even though they don't count, but have the feel of what a real Major League game will look like.
And he is leading off today, so he's going to be seeing more at-bats, I'm assuming. But tell me what you think about this. So Victor Scott, center field, Dylan Carlson, right field, Alec Burleson, left field. Could that be an opening day type outfield and have Jordan Walker be a DH? Does that give you more defense out in the outfield?
I think it could. The way I've looked at Burleson, because he can flat out hit, and he's a professional hitter. Even though he's young in his career, he's a pro hitter. The way I would look at it, the way I'd probably play it, is that if I had a lead in the 6th,
right,
and beyond,
He's coming out.
he out.
Yep.
He gone. And so I'm putting in my best defensive alignment that I have, which would include a Brendan Donovan being over him. It would include some of the guys that we're talking about coming in and playing left field. So, yeah, I could see that as your opening day lineup. Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of different ways they could go with this, and I'm not even too sure if they know at this particular moment. I think that's why we're seeing Victor Scott in the lineup every single day, just to see what he can provide against, like you said, these MLB-ready starters. And then, of course, Dylan Carlson also right there as well. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And at the end of the day, I hope he makes the team. I want to see him play. Bottom line, I don't care about all the extra other stuff going on. I just want to see him play. As a fan, I do.
314, even if Scott struggles to hit, he has a great approach at the plate, low strikeout rate, high walk rate, can bunt. He'll find ways to get on base.
I love that.
Yeah, and that has been the resume that has been built in a short amount of time in his minor league career. So we'll see what happens if he does make that jump to the major leagues. Opening night, he's inserted in center field, and day after day, he's going to play there until until he proves that he can't. He's going to play every day if he's part of the opening day roster, which would then, I think, Marshy, give you a little indication of where they feel Tommy Edman is progressing. Haven't heard a lot about it, except he's not going to be on the opening day roster.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how they're going to play that, and I mean, what do you do if Victor Scott's playing lights out too, right? What do you do with Tommy Edman? You put him back to second base? I just wonder if this team has too many positional players at this moment to really have a solidified lineup midway through the year.
228 in St. Louis. It's the fast lane, and coming up, it's what's trending on.
With the weather changing, March is a critical time to check your home's windows. If yours are cracked or leaking or won't stay open or won't open, then it's time to call the Rosa Window Nation. Right now, every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 free windows. There's no limit to how much you could save. Plus, you could get even more savings with 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments for 24 months. Window Nations comes with a lifetime warranty and can be installed in 1 day or less. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder thousands of homeowners have trusted Window Nation for their homes, and you can too. So if your old finicky windows and high energy costs from this winter are cutting deep into your finances, do not miss out. With an unlimited buy 2, get 2 free, plus 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments for 24 months, you can't afford to wait. Plus, get a house of windows and get a free pair of Cards tickets. It's easy. Just call 866-90-NATION or visit them online at windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate.
Randy Carricker here with Jim Olive, the Auto Loan Pro from AutoLoanPro.com. Jim, if people are in the market for a new car or truck, why should they go to AutoLoanPro.com right now?
Simply put, Randy, rates are at an all-time high, and we're here to help people get in the car, truck, SUV of their choice, get them driving today, eliminate any roadblocks that they possibly have with any kind of financial situation, and get them driving today.
Jim Olive is working with more than 50 lenders. He is the Auto Loan Pro from AutoLoanPro.com. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, choose the Auto Loan Pro, AutoLoanPro.com.
Saliga. Heating, cooling.
If you're feeling the heat on and off the court, Saliga Heating and Cooling is a slam dunk choice to help cool things down. Get a free estimate on a new AC system and enjoy 72 months of special financing. Plus, score big with up to $2,500 in rebates from Ameren, Spire, and American Standard. Stay cool and call Saliga at 314-481-7333 or visit SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer, subject to credit approval. See dealer for details.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Andrew Marsh. It's time for a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Blues lost last night to the Colorado Avalanche by a final score of 4-3. They'll take on the Senators tomorrow. Pregame starts at 5. Puck drop is at 6. And you can catch all the action right here on 101 ESPN. We'll talk later in the show in the 4 o'clock hour with our insider from The Athletic, Jeremy Rutherford. So stay tuned for that. Once again, Blues, Ottawa Senators tomorrow night right here on 101 ESPN. The Cardinals will take on the Nationals later today. 5:05 start time. Steven Matz takes on Zach Davies. And tonight on 101 ESPN, we'll have the first 4 as Grambling takes on Montana State and Colorado will go up against Boise State. Coming up next, though, we have What's Trending. I'm Andrew Marsh, and the Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at Londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
It's time to find out what's going on in the sports world with What's Trending Now. Brought to you by Goodwill. Donate a car and get tickets to the St. Louis Cardinals.
101 ESPN, the Fast Lane. Danny Mack and Marshy getting you till 5:30. As Marshy said, we'll have the college basketball NCAA tournament tonight. Montana State, Grambling, and then Boise State, Colorado. Also, we're getting a ton of texts about Victor Scott, so keep those coming in. We'll answer some of those or get to some of those texts and your comments on Victor Scott later in the show. Mic drops will be played as well, and we gave you the lineup that features Victor Scott, and that's 5:05 with the first pitch down in Florida. Marshy, what's trending?
All right, Dan, Major League Baseball is officially underway, the regular season, as the Dodgers defeated the San Diego Padres 5-2. Shohei Ohtani in his Dodger debut had an RBI single that capped a 4-run 8th-inning rally. And it's all thanks to Jake Cronenworth's glove. Did you happen to see the ball go right through the webbing of his glove?
Would have been a tailor-made double play, too. Tailor-made. He's at first base. He was ranging to his right, and the ball went right through the webbing of the glove. And this is the part that I think is really tough on the player. Mm-hmm. He gets charged with an error on that play.
Yeah.
Error needs to go to the equipment man.
I mean, it really does.
I mean, I guess, you check your glove. You always are checking. You're playing with the glove. You're making sure the webbing is tight, but, things happen. And so he gets charged with an error on the play. And I was looking at, I don't know if you were watching the game. I was up early, and I'm a baseball freak and love it and all that stuff, and a geek when it comes to baseball. But I was up early watching the game. And the one thing that stood out to me, it's one thing to see the Dodger lineup on paper, Marshy. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to watch them. I mean, it's Betts, it's Ohtani, it's Freeman, it's Muncy, it's Teoscar Hernandez. I know I'm missing guys, but it's relentless up and down their lineup. They're going to win 100-plus games, and they're going to be the favorite to win the World Series. And they should be.
Oh man, this first series for the Cards it just worries me with what we're seeing in spring training from the pitching staff. And obviously, like you said, yesterday Kyle Gibson is working on his cutter. Like, we're not seeing what these guys are going to look like in the regular season. At least I hope not. I hope they're not producing these type of numbers once next week rolls around. But when I look at a lineup like that, how do you not think that team is supposed to be the best team? And I mean, mind you, they were losing. But just like that, they can snap off, 4 runs, and then the game's over.
What'd you think of the atmosphere? I was talking about it this morning on the opening drive, and the fans were into it. They had dancers and the mascots on top of the dugouts. This is during the game.
Yeah.
And they're singing, and folks are having fun, and there's interaction with the players and all that kind of stuff. I actually enjoyed it. A Major League game and seeing it. Now, I've seen video of that from Korea when they're playing, and you see it all the time down in like the Caribbean Series or Winter League Baseball in Venezuela. I liked it. I don't know if I'd like it every night, but I enjoyed it, at least a small sample size.
I like it too, and it reminds me of the World Baseball Classic too.
Exactly.
When we watched that last year, seeing all of like the instruments that people would bring in. And I think Miami, if I'm not mistaken, Miami is now allowing fans to bring in instruments.
They are.
And I think they could maybe recreate that type of atmosphere.
Only problem is, Marshy, there's going to be 5,000 people there.
That is true. That is true. So they might need to put like a microphone in front of all the trumpets and whatnot just to make it sound louder. But I think it's really cool. It reminds me of like a soccer atmosphere or like a European hockey atmosphere. I like that because nowadays I feel like sometimes when I go to like a ballpark or I go to a hockey game, the energy's not there. It's just, I want more energy.
There's certain places you go in Major League Baseball, and you can just feel it. Like, there's an energy in the ballpark. You go to a game at Wrigley, and I've been to games at Wrigley that did not involve the Cardinals, and still, there is an energy in that ballpark. Old Yankee Stadium had the nostalgia, and it smelled. You had the hot dogs. I mean, there was just a feeling like, this is cool. I'm in a baseball park that has all this history. There are other places that are like that too. But then you have cavernous, the Coliseum in Oakland. It's brutal. You go to Denver, and it's a great night out. The weather is perfect, and there's no atmosphere.
Right.
It's brutal.
Well, there's no one there.
And there's not a lot of people there. It used to be when you'd go there,
the
place was packed.
Oh, I bet. I mean, they haven't been great, though.
Oh, yeah.
When was the last time they were good?
Who would want you? I posed this question this morning. Who would make you want to go, if you're a Rockies fan, to go see them play? And my thing was Todd Helton bobblehead night.
Yeah.
You want to go watch Chris Bryant? Okay.
Speaking of him, he has
fallen off.
Fallen off.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when Robinson Cano went to the Mariners.
Yes.
Like, why do these big free agents go to these teams that have no winning pedigree? I get it, the money, whatever. But do you want to win? Or do you just want to make your money? And some players, it might just be about money. But I look at the Rockies, I can't even tell you the next time I think they'll be relevant.
Trying to think. Well, they've tried everything. They've tried finding guys that had sinkers. They've tried finding guys that were hard throwers, that pitched up in the zone. They've tried everything with their pitching staff. I mean, when I'm saying up in the zone, people would hear that and go, well, that's a lot of bombs are going to get hit. Yeah, that happened, but they're trying to find like hard throwers that had the little extra zip to get to tie guys up, to entice them, that kind of thing. They tried sinker ballers. Remember when they got Denny Nagel and Mike Hampton? And they thought, okay, this is it. And when Darryl Kyle left there, he rediscovered his curveball in St. Louis. It's really hard to figure out how you can win. I mean, they get a whole draft of pitchers and still not find the right guys that can pitch at that ballpark.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They have a pretty decent record at home, though.
Yes.
So how does that not translate? Is it because they just suck on the road?
I think it's because the offensive numbers are so good at that ballpark.
Right.
So you're playing 81 dates at home. Now, the other team is going to hit it too.
For sure.
You know, but I guess there's a rhythm to it. You are at home. There's a familiarity to it. I think that'd be part of it.
Going back to the ballpark question and like the atmosphere, do you believe, and you mentioned Old Yankee Stadium and Wrigley Field, do you believe the atmosphere is a little bit better in those places because of the historic aspect of the ballpark?
Yeah, it certainly adds to it.
Is it like because I look at some new ballparks now, the architecture, it's obviously different. A lot of them look exactly the same for the most part. Do you think
a lot of them took over at Camden Yards. When Camden Yards did that model, then a lot of teams said, okay, we got to do that kind of model, which is cool. I like it. And they moved the fences back and made it more of a playable ballpark. It's fair. Like Philly, Citizens Bank Park, place goes nuts. You know, and you sit there and you say, well, we hear how great the Pirates Stadium is, but no one's there. They were there when they were winning.
Yeah.
They were coming out. It's a great sports town in Pittsburgh, and that place got loud. And with the Phillies, it gets loud. And you got Bryce Harper and Schwarber hitting bombs.
Yep.
I mean, it's a fun place to go, and it's a tough place to play.
And Philly fans, they're on like a whole different. They're in a whole different stratosphere, right?
I love them.
With the Pirates fans, though, you're right. When that team's good, they are loud, so loud that Johnny Cueto will drop the ball on the mound and then give up a home run to not Russell Branyan. Who was it? The catcher at the time. Russell Branyan. I have BT on my mind. What is his name? He was the catcher for the Pirates.
Let's see.
It's something Russell.
Oh, Russell Martin.
Russell Martin.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Russell Martin takes him deep. Like, that place was going nuts, and they were a win away from the NLCS back in 2013. So who knows where that entire organization goes if Adam Wainwright doesn't shut them down.
The problem with one of the things that happens with Pittsburgh is that they get out of the race, and so they're done, let's say, by mid-August, and football is king. So high school football is huge. College football is huge. Obviously, the Steelers are huge.
And the Penguins, for the most part, are making playoff runs every year.
And that's
this
the other
year,
one.
not so much. But.
So then you have, the Penguins starting up. And, what's the reason to go to the ballpark? Your team's getting their teeth kicked in.
Right.
You're 20 games out. People stay away. Not the best formula for having success. But I'll say this. When they're winning, it is fun to be there.
Cool place to go.
It is. It's a cool place to go. 2:44 in St. Louis. It's the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. One of the questions that Marshy posed to me, can veterans provide the wrong type of leadership, or what is the right type of leadership? We'll talk about that. This is the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. Jazz Chisholm, and he is with the Marlins, and he is one of the young up-and-coming stars, if not a star already. And Marshy, when I hear that, I think, man, have times changed.
Oh, yeah.
Holy smokes. Although, I'll say this, and that's Marshy, I'm Danny Mack, and we're filling in for Jamie Rivers, Anthony Stalter, and Carey Davis here on the Fast Lane. We'll take it till 5:30. I'll never forget, a few years ago, speaking of being in Colorado, this was interesting to me. Gerardo Parra hit a long, and I mean a long home run off of Lance Lynn. And we know Lance Lynn is old school.
Oh, yeah.
And Gerardo Parra had his bat up with his right hand as if he was carrying the Olympic torch.
Oh, my God.
And walking up the first base line. And I thought, I do not want to be Parra next time he's up. He's going to get one in the ear. I mean, I just thought that's a given. You're doing this against one of the old school guys in baseball, and it's kind of the unwritten rule that you don't show up the opposition and all that stuff.
Right.
And the next time up, he pitched him normally and got a ground ball or fly ball, whatever it was. And we're on the bus, and I'm friends with Lance, and so I can approach him with a lot of different things. And I said, I go, what in the world's going on there? I go, why didn't you put that in his ribs? He said, no, man. He said the game's changed.
Even he
of all people,
okay.
He's like, no. He's like, that's just that's how the game is played now. He goes, I don't have to like it, but that's how the game is played. And so the game has changed with these young kids coming up, and they're watching some of their favorite players, like he said with Juan Soto. But I think leadership has got to be earned. You know, if you're a young player and you're doing that stuff, I just don't agree with it. I think you're there to be not seen, and you open up your ears and listen to what the veterans have to say. You know, you should be quiet and not noticed in the clubhouse. At least that's my take on it. And maybe I'm out of date. Maybe I'm too old school, but I just think there's a way that you can ingratiate yourself to the organization and to your teammates by staying somewhat quiet. I'm not trying to take away what they do, because if that gets them ready physically, I understand that. But there's got to be a little bit of that pulling back once I'm in the major leagues, just for a while.
I do agree with a little bit of what you're saying. I think for me, I would like a player to not necessarily establish themselves first before getting into that. I don't mind the bat flips, and I think baseball needs it, because baseball to me has become boring to a lot of people that aren't diehard baseball fans. And I want baseball to be appealing to everybody, because I want to hear more about it on a national perspective. I want to turn on ESPN and not see the NFL draft while we're months away from the NFL draft, right? I want to see Major League Baseball. The season has just started. Like, I want to see more of the excitement, and I like the players showing off their creativity and their personality. I think there is a line, though, that you can cross, or you shouldn't cross. A player like that, first home run, sure, you want to be excited, but like the carrying the bat down
it was interesting
to first base, that's a little too much. I think certain players can show personality, but also be respectful to the game.
Yes. Now, how far do you take it? You know, I didn't like what he had to say, and I try to be open-minded to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm old school, so I'm out of date with some of this stuff. But I took notice when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said the old guys, they came in and unleashed on this young player, and these guys haven't done anything, and they're not as good of players. Well, they were at some point.
Right.
So they command respect.
There's a reason why they were on the club for 9 years, as he said.
Exactly. You get in 10 years of big league service, you're a hell of a player.
Well, 10 years of any professional sport.
Good point. So I kind of took that the wrong way, that I didn't like that. I didn't like that he had to say that, because you respect those guys. And there's certain guys that when they lead, they're not going to be in your face. But when they finally do unleash, it's like, oh, man, this guy, he's been building this up for a while. He leads by example on the field, and now he's saying in the clubhouse. That, to me, carries more weight than a guy that's just screaming nonstop.
Now, obviously, we weren't in that situation. I don't really necessarily like if a veteran is yelling, because, at least for me, when you're yelling at me, I'm not hearing anything. Like, I want to have an adult conversation. So if those veterans were yelling and not just going up to this player and be like, hey, man, I love your energy, but let's just dial it back just a little bit, right? We're not the best team in the league by any means. I love the energy, but let's tamper it a little bit. I would respect that. The whole yelling thing, I don't like that, so I'm not going to criticize, Jazz Chisholm for saying something. The thing is, the way that I look at it, I love the bat flips and whatnot. I also don't mind if that person gets drilled in the back.
Right.
Like, I don't mind it. Like, the game
you want a little new school and old school.
I like a little bit of both. I like a little bit of like intensity out there and a little animosity and hell, let's get a bench clearing brawl. Like, I love seeing that stuff.
So I don't mind the bat flips anymore. I used to, but that's just part of the game today.
Yeah.
However, I think you need to know when you do it. Mm-hmm. So when you're down 5-0,
yes,
and you start trotting and bat flipping, and I'm like, really? It's now 5-1. Mm-hmm. Like, what happened to winning the game and having a situation where you do it at the right time? Mm-hmm. I see that all the time, and that bothers me.
I think what bothers me more is when players stare at the ball. I don't care about the bat flip. Like, I like the bat flip. I don't like when players will, hit a ball a mile or whatever, and then they'll just stare at it. Sometimes the ball does not go out of the yard.
Yes.
Josh Donaldson, I saw a video compilation of him staring at the ball, and none of them went out of the yard, and he was out or got a single or got thrown out going to second. That bothers me, and I'm so glad that no Cardinal player does that.
There's some left fielders that watch the ball go over their head or even short of them and think it's a home run. Marcell Ozuna.
You mean Spider-Man?
Hey, have you seen the documentary on Netflix, Last Chance U?
I've heard of it. I have actually never watched it, though.
But you see the screaming. This is your point, I think. You see the screaming of the coach, and it's just berating kids nonstop. And at some point, the kids are like, I'm done.
Yeah, they don't care.
It's in ear, one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
It's just like uncle with this stuff.
And that's with anything. Like, that could just be disciplining a kid outside of a sporting event. Like, kids nowadays, they're so glued to their phones. They're like, whatever. I'm going to go back and do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, I do not need to hear what you have to say. And I wonder if that has translated into sports now, where some players, and maybe there's a few here in St. Louis, where, and this is, some people might think this, that there is a message trying to be sent to this player, but the way that it is being approached, they're not getting it.
So to your point, too, I don't mind the Soto shuffle. I actually like it.
Oh, it's funny.
It's funny. He's entertaining. He's smiling, and he's hitting rockets all over the place. And people respect him because he's a great hitter. He's one of the best hitters in baseball. So I don't mind that. There are some things, though, that I maybe because he has a resume, I don't mind it. But there's other guys I'm like, nah, you can't be doing that yet.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where I'm too old school with it.
What did people think when Big Mac and Sammy Sosa were going through the home run fest back in the late 90s, and obviously Sammy Sosa had his little hop. Yeah, like I obviously I hate the Cubs and all that stuff. Chicago sports, not a fan. But I did find that pretty funny. Like, I like that.
I did too. I didn't mind it. And when you're hitting 60-plus home runs, what are you going to say? You can do what you want. I don't remember McGuire just sitting there and watching one. I'm probably wrong. I bet he probably did at some point. I just remember him hitting him and putting his head down and trotting around the bases. I can't remember a specific time when he just sat there and admired it, where there's going to be guys that we're going to watch maybe tomorrow in the game in Korea that you're going to have some guy hit a bomb and just watch it. I mean, it could happen. It's just part of the game now. It's accepted.
Did Albert ever do that?
Oh,
I feel like he did a few times.
He did it in his last year.
Yeah.
He would sit there and watch. Or the thing about Albert, he'd swing and then walk like 2 steps.
Right, and then start the trot.
And do you remember one of the home runs that he hit last year, or 2 years ago, I should say? He hits it and then looks into the dugout and kind of acts like he's ripping off his jersey like Superman, that kind of thing. So that stuff happens.
But that goes back to your point, because what I thought was great about Albert's last year here in St. Louis is that almost every single home run he hit mattered.
Yes.
Going back to what you were saying, some guys will throw the bat or do whatever nonsense, and they're down 5-1. Like, Albert was either tying games or he was putting the Cardinals ahead late in games. And that's when you can, puff your chest out and be like, hey, look what I just did. By the way, I'm one of the best players ever, so I can do this.
I guess I'm thinking back to some of the home runs he hit. The home run that he hit in Houston off of Brad Lidge.
Oh, you have to. I would walk around the whole bases after that one.
He stood and watched that. The other one, because he was a great villain, and I think he played it up, was Barry Bonds.
Oh, yeah.
Bonds would stand a little bit there. And
he would just put his arms up like this.
That was the one. I'll never forget that home run that he hit in Pittsburgh when he was a different body. But it was Tom Pagnazzi's behind the plate and, just puts his head down and is like, oh. And Bonds hits one a mile with his hands up. It's like, well, what are you going to do? It's Barry Bonds.
Exactly.
But there's some guys that just seems like, because he was a villain, that it played into him being a villain.
And I like that. I think baseball needs more villains.
Yeah.
Who comes to mind now that is a villain in baseball? Other than, and I'm not talking about a team. Like, the Dodgers would be the villain right now because of all their signings. But is there a player? But the thing about the Dodgers is they have a lot of likable people on their team.
Yes.
But is there one villain that sticks out in Major League Baseball right now?
The only thing I can think of is when the Cardinals were in the mid-2000s under Tony, if you were on the other side, they were villains.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were guys that they could not stand. Jimmy Edmonds in center, Albert at first, Vina, Renteria, Roland, Walker, Yachty, Tony La Russa, Dave Duncan. I mean, they were great villains.
Oh, yeah. Tony going up against Dusty Baker.
It's the best.
Oh, that was awesome.
Hell, Dave Duncan got in a fight on the pregame. Gerald Perry in Pittsburgh. Those are old school days, man. Yep. That stuff's fun. 3:02 in St. Louis, talking Cardinal baseball coming up. And we're going to talk about the Cardinals' path to the postseason. Is it through the division? Well, let's get into it when we come back. This is 101 ESPN. In St. Louis. Time check is brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers. Danny Mac and Marshy with you until 5:30. Then we have NCAA basketball. Jamie Rivers traveling with the Blues and the Ottawa Senators tomorrow here on 101 ESPN. Anthony Stalter on vacation. And Carey Davis just a bit under the weather, so another day off for him. And hopefully he'll be back with you tomorrow. By the way, we were reminded during the break on the text line, Marshy, one of the great villains right now in baseball is Jose Altuve.
Oh, yes.
Hadn't thought about that. The cheating scandal took you to that level.
I feel like nothing really came about that.
No.
It kind of came and then it went, and we really have just moved on.
COVID hit.
Yeah.
That was part of it, right? Wasn't it 19, and then that was the talk of spring training, what would happen, and you had a terrible press conference by Jim Crane and the Astros, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and it kind of became somewhat of an afterthought because at that point sports shuts down, and then you're thinking, will baseball be one of the first sports back because it's in the summer, you're outside, you're socially distanced, and it didn't. I mean, it was still for some front and center.
Yeah.
I don't think it got back full swing to where people were talking about it until after that year.
Until 2021.
Well, Joe Kelly did try to drill somebody, though.
Yes, he did.
Remember that? They went there and...
I appreciate him.
I did too.
Speaking of like old school players, he's one of those guys.
He is. He'll put one in your ribs. The Cardinals' best path to the postseason through the division. That's the question that you asked. I look at this division, and I'm sold on the Reds. I think they're going to be pretty good. I think the Cardinals can be pretty good, and I think the Cubs will be pretty good. And when I say pretty good, I mean good enough to win the division. Like, what's it going to take, 85 wins? It's a poor division, so 85 wins, you might get in.
Maybe 85 to 90, somewhere in that range, maybe 88.
88 wins the division.
You think so?
Absolutely. I think where the teams, I was talking to Ollie about this right before spring training, and I said, what was it like playing outside the division, and you're playing everybody now in Major League Baseball? And he just looked at me, he goes, man, it's a real thing. You know, when you're taking on the Yankees every year, and when Boston is good, or you have the Houston Astros, and you're already trying to contend with your own division, but the games are fewer now in beating up on the Pirates or beating up on a Cubs team that was down. You can't do that anymore, and that's why I just don't see them getting any of these teams above 85 wins.
Do you like the new rules where everybody plays everybody, or do you wish it would have went back to sort of what it used to be, where you weren't seeing American League teams until the playoffs, until you get to the World Series? Now, I know it's tough because you have 15 and 15, so at least one team or two teams are going to have to mix at some point.
I think it's good for baseball.
You think so?
I think it's good because then you can see, I don't know how you feel about this or our listeners, but when the Cardinals had the Yankees come to town, I want to go watch Aaron Judge.
Oh, yeah.
And so when the Angels came through, I wanted to see Ohtani. So it gave me a reason outside of just interleague play. Now I have a chance to see everybody in 2-year period. I'm going to see somebody that I want to watch. At least it brings me to the ballpark. So that's why I think it's a good thing.
I do like it too. And from an on-field perspective, I think it tests the organizations around the league to be better. And like, you cannot just hope that you beat up on the teams in your division, especially if you're the Cardinals, because now you're going to be tested against the best of the best in the league. And I like that. I want to see how they match up against some of these teams, because if you do make it to the postseason and you do make it to the World Series, I want to know how you match up, and maybe we already saw that matchup earlier in the season.
As a kid, one of my favorite nights in baseball was watching the All-Star game. So you had the game of the week. Bunch of games weren't on television. So you never saw the American League unless they're on the game of the week. And the All-Star game, I'd see these players I'd read about in the Sporting News or in Sports Illustrated, and now I got to finally see them. And now you see them all the time. Now they're on TV all the time. I understand that. But to see Ohtani in person, he's worth the price of admission, especially if he's pitching and then the next day he's hitting or vice versa. Like, I want to go see that.
Right.
Another villain that someone just brought up, the 636, they said Brandon Phillips.
Oh, yeah. Boo Phillips.
Great. You talked about benches clearing. That's one of the best in the last 20, 25 years of Cardinal baseball.
Oh, yes. With Jason LaRue.
Yes.
And, oh, yeah.
Chris Carpenter in the middle of it, Scott Rowland, Jeff Suppan crawling on all fours trying to get out of the pile of humanity. It was pretty awesome.
That was great.
I interviewed Brandon Phillips, and I had a little relationship with him because we saw Cincinnati so much. And I said, hey, can I interview you? And he said, absolutely, Dan, whatever you need. I said, okay, let's do it tomorrow. And I said, we're doing the interview and talking about his idols growing up, because I like that stuff. And then I brought up, I said, boy, you get booed in St. Louis every time. I said, from your perspective, what's it like? And this may shock people. He said it's the best baseball town in America.
That's awesome.
He said, I love going to St. Louis. He said, I love interacting with the fans. He said, I love being booed. That means I've done something.
Right.
He said, but it's the best baseball town in America.
And I think with St. Louis fans, the booing is almost, and maybe with some players it's not, but I feel like the booing is out of respect. Whereas if you go to Philly, the booing is like, I hate you. Yeah. And I'm going to throw batteries at you. Like, it's just completely different.
We were in Philly a few years ago. It's been now quite a while. And J.D. Drew, it was his first game in Philly after turning down the Phillies. They drafted him. He goes, plays independent. Cardinals sign him. And Jeff Murphy was the bullpen catcher at that time. And he went out with a J.D. Drew jersey for batting practice. And he said, dude, there's people spitting on me, throwing things at me. He said it was unbelievable. It does bring up, is Bryce Harper a villain?
I don't think so. I can understand why some people might think that, but I love Bryce Harper. I think he's great for the game of baseball.
Wouldn't he have been a perfect fit here?
Oh, my gosh.
People would have loved him here in St. Louis. And I think opinions changed with him when Cabrera hit him in the face a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And he sent a note back and saying, hey, I know it wasn't intentional. Don't worry about it. Don't let this get in the back of your head. You're a hell of a pitcher and keep going. I thought he handled that with his much class and toned down what could have been a really bad situation and just nipped it in the bud before it became an issue.
You make a great point because I feel like the big thing that people thought of him was the Jonathan Papelbon incident.
Absolutely, in Washington.
Yes, him not hustling and whatnot, and him just sort of being a young player that...
He's the guy that we were talking about before with Jazz Chisholm.
Yes. But now he still has a little bit of that in him, especially in the playoffs. Like, he was massive for the Phillies 2 seasons ago.
Yep.
So you're allowed to do all the hoopla and whatever you want to do when you hit a huge home run to send your team to the World Series. Like, you can do that. I just think he's gotten older, and I feel like a lot of players do this. They have that excitement and personality to them early on in their career, and then as they get older, they get wiser, and they stop doing that as much. But they still do it, but they end up kind of channeling it in a different way, and it really revs up the rest of their team.
I think this is a good one. 314 says, Wilson Contreras, great villain. Hated him with the Cubs. Love the energy he brings to St. Louis. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably pick anybody on the Cubs in that 2016 era.
Yeah.
Any one of them I was not a fan of. Javi Baez was a guy that I just could not stand. And I don't know what he's doing with Detroit. I looked at his numbers the other day, actually. It's not good, Dan.
Well, sometimes he misses the ball by a foot, literally.
Yes.
How about the one that bounces in front of the plate? Have you seen that one?
Yes. I've
It's
also
incredible.
seen there is 2 videos that were stitched together, and it was Sister Jean throwing out the first pitch, but she threw it like right around where Javi Baez would swing, and they overlapped them, and it's Javi Baez getting struck out by Sister Jean. It's pretty funny.
We're getting a bunch of people texting in Niger Morgan.
Oh, yes. Tony Plush.
T. Plush.
Yes.
He was a hell of a villain. Milton Bradley was a great villain. He had a couple of different stints with different teams, but when he came through with the Dodgers, people couldn't stand him here in St. Louis.
What about Will Clark?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he took out, there was Oquendo and Ozzie at second base, and he went in hard, and benches cleared with that one. That was a good fight. That was an old school fight. You can't do that anymore. there's a reason why I think that you don't see the good old argument anymore, and that's because of replay.
Yes.
So you want to go out and argue, they can come back and say, well, we had it on replay. And the other part that is missing in the game, like Hal McRae, for those that remember Hal McRae, he was a coach here at one point, the hitting coach of the St. Louis Cardinals, and he played a number of years in the big leagues. He would take guys out, and it was like watching Naked Gun. Remember how they took the guy out at second, basically like a linebacker coming in to make a tackle? He used to do that, and you can't do that anymore in the game. There's rules designed to make sure that you don't have Matt Holliday going into Marco Scudero.
Right.
You can't have that play anymore to break up a double play. I miss that.
Do you miss the collision at home?
Just going to bring that up. I do. I think of Ray Langford and Darren Dalton. Every time I see that, I'm like, that's what defines me thinking about Ray Langford, who's a Cardinal Hall of Famer.
I do understand, though, why they got rid of that for the safety of the catchers and the player running from third to home.
If I'm an owner, I like it because I want to keep. If I'm paying my guy $15 million, I want to keep him on the field, which is the Buster Posey rule.
Yes,
so it makes sense.
So I get it.
Are teams too obsessed with velocity as we'll throw out the topics of the day, but then really not get to them? Which is how we do this. So this is 101 ESPN in the Fast Lane. Marshy brought this up. It is interesting. Are major league teams obsessed, and really baseball in general, obsessed with velocity? Chris Bassett played in the major leagues, and he was asked that question by Chris Rose on his show. Interesting what he had to say, and wherever Brad Thompson may be, he is nodding in approval. Saying that Chris Bassett guy, he's on it.
I think Janet's nodding in approval, too. She's always talking about pitching rather than just throwing the ball, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, one guy that in particular growing up was that, at least at the time, that threw just absolute gas was Aroldis Chapman.
Sure.
Would you say he ushered in this new wave of For
me, he did.
Yeah. So
coming from Cuba, he had defected, and then you heard a lot about him, and all of a sudden the Reds sign him, and then he's throwing 100+, and he's doing it with, it looks like, with ease.
However, he could not hit the strike zone at some points.
Sometimes, yeah.
So
uncomfortable at bat for sure.
Absolutely. I just think nowadays we're just seeing so much high velo, 5 innings. That's why Blake Snell, we're getting 5 innings, we're getting walks because one, these guys have no control. Not that they don't have control, they have less control because they're just firing it in there, and they're not going as deep into games as we've seen before.
I also wonder if the pitch clock is affected, and I would imagine Major League Baseball, the Players Association, is going to take a look at this, but it takes a lot out of your body to throw 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 95.
I wouldn't know. I've never been able to do that, but I could imagine.
If you don't have 45 seconds between pitches, you're out of breath, you're trying to regroup, all that stuff. But here's why I went and did the numbers on this. Here's why velocity does matter. So this is slugging percentage against four-seamers in Major League Baseball from 2020 through 23. So 90 to 91, 532. 91 to 92, 515. So it's slightly going down. 92 to 93, 498. And this is slugging percentage. 93 to 94, 467. 94 to 95, 442. 95 to 96, 416. So you're getting the idea here. 96 to 97 miles per hour, 391. Now it went up, or it goes down again. 97 to 98, 365. 327, the slugging percentage if you're throwing 98 to 99, and 99 over 100 is 307. That's why velocity matters.
So the numbers do back that up.
The numbers back it up. But I want to go back to my original point. I wonder, and I would guarantee the Players Association and Tony Clark are going to take a look at the pitch clock and say, is this affecting my guys? And it seems like every guy is at least throwing 95 coming out of a pen. How much is it affecting my players? Because they're trying to amp up every single pitch. It's max velocity. It's max effort. How much is that going to affect the pitch clock in injuries to my guys? And I think it would make some sense.
I would too. I mean, I don't really care about the pitch clock. Like if they got rid of it, you do care about it?
I think it's good for the game.
See, I don't really care about how long the baseball game is. Like,
I love hearing you say that.
If I go to a game, I'm there for the game. I know what I signed up for. And if I want to leave early, I can. I don't, because I hate being the guy that leaves early. I don't ever want to do that. But I don't really care. And if I'm at home watching the game, what do I care? I can turn the game off, or I can do something else. Like during the inning, I can be productive if I'm at home watching a game. I really don't care how long the game is.
So at what point are we going to say, finally, we're trying to tinker with the game and the speed of the game, and we're getting young people involved, hopefully, even though the average age of a baseball fan continues to go up? and just say, this is what it is.
Yeah.
This is the game.
It's how it's been forever.
Right.
Like, you know?
I love the beauty of a long game. I don't mind it. Goes in extra innings. I don't mind it. I don't like seeing the ghost runner at second, but I understand why they do it.
Yeah.
You know, because you're going to wind up having injuries or guys that are throwing 4 or 5 innings and then have to go down to the minor leagues the next day. I get all that stuff, but I'm contradicting myself in that I think it's a better product. I do think having a quicker game is a better product. However, it never bothered me before. If a game took 3.5 hours, 4 hours, I didn't care because I just love baseball. I love the nuance of being able to sit down and talk about it and say, well, what pitch would you throw here? No, he's going to get him to chase. Oh, I try to sneak in a fastball. Whatever. That's the beauty of watching the game of baseball.
What's the difference between a football game being 4 or 5 hours long? And it's not like they're playing, it's not like it's hockey or basketball where there's constant motion going back and forth.
Sure.
You're going minutes potentially before you even get another playoff. Like, what's the difference there?
618 brings up a good point. It's not about the length of the game. It's about the pace, in my opinion.
That's fair.
That is very fair.
Even there's hockey games that I've watched where I'm like, this game has zero flow to it. There's constant whistles. I'm not into it. And I'm sure from a broadcasting perspective, that can be hard for people trying to just get into the flow of the game. And I'm sure it's hard for fans as well. So I understand that. The length itself, I don't mind because I would rather watch a longer game than a shorter game. Because I'm like, oh, man, it's over already.
Yeah, 636 says the pitch clock is about taking out the dead time, what you're talking about in baseball, and that's why I love it. I also don't mind a long game, but I hate the wasted time by pitchers stepping off and batters stepping out. I agree with that.
I do agree with that.
Drives me crazy. Like the Gallegos appearances prior to the pitch clock, that was tough to watch. That's not entertaining.
No.
That's 45 seconds between pitches and looking in, getting a sign. No, doesn't like, steps off. Then he pitches. It's a ball, gets the ball back, starts walking around the mound slowly. That's not entertainment to me.
There are certain rules that have been implemented that I do like. I like the disengagement rule.
Yeah.
Where you only get 2 opportunities to throw over.
Sure.
I like that. That means, hey, if like Victor Scott
is the one I'm going to bring up.
If I'm a pitcher, I'm trying to get him before he goes.
Or at least have the threat of an element of throwing over.
Yes. I'm definitely, he's in the corner of my eye. I'm definitely worried about him. So that changes the game and it makes it a little bit more interesting. I like that aspect of it. But when you're rushing pitchers, exactly what Chris Bassett said, like these guys are throwing 99 plus miles per hour almost every single throw. Their arms are going to give out.
It is interesting, though, isn't it? Those slugging percentage numbers.
That is interesting.
You know, it's just something you got to think about, and that's the way the game is played today.
But I wonder how deep these pitchers are going. Like, how long does that go for? Because, and obviously there's a lot of bullpen guys that can max out. That's fine. They're only throwing an inning anyways. But I wonder what the numbers are for the starters and how long they are staying in the game.
3:31 is our time check, brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers. It's the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. Coming up, Sports Six Pack.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Andrew Marsh. It's time for a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues lost to the Colorado Avalanche last night by a final score of 4-3. We'll talk later today with Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider from The Athletic, so stay tuned for that. The Blues will be back in action tomorrow taking on the Ottawa Senators. Pregame starts at 5. Puck drop is at 6, and you can catch all the action right here on 101 ESPN. The Cardinals take on the Nationals later today, 5:05. First pitch, Steven Matz going up against Zach Davies. And later tonight on 101 ESPN, we'll have Grambling taking on Montana State. And then Colorado going up against Boise State for the NCAA tournament's first 4. Pregame for that starts at 5:30. I'm Andrew Marsh, and the Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
It's time for the Fast Lane to answer your sports questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
Asking me all these weird questions.
Answer the question.
Answer the question.
Answer me!
The Sports Six-Pack is now.
Sports Six-Pack a little early today because we're off the air at 5:30, and then it's the NCAA tournament. And again, those games beginning at 5:30. I know, Marshy, you totally be tuned in to Montana State and Grambling.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure our friends will be tuned in as well.
Believe me, our friends are all over this.
Yes.
Boise State and Colorado. And that game will be at the second game of the doubleheader as well. Question 1, please.
Question number 1.
Dan, I got a text earlier today from the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314 talking about banana ball. What are your thoughts on banana ball? Do you think it's fun for fans, and is it good for the game of baseball?
What the hell is it?
You haven't seen banana ball with the Savannah Bananas?
Oh, the Savannah Bananas. Yes. Do I think it's good for baseball? Sure, why not? Mm-hmm. Why not go to the ballpark and be entertained? Have a little fun with it. Do something different. It's funny. I mean, the synchronized dances and stuff that they have going on, I kind of enjoy it.
I do too. The thing is, there's a timer on the game, right, which goes completely against everything we were just talking about.
But they've got things between pitches,
yes,
though.
They have a bunch of stuff going on. I know they played at Minute Maid like a week or so ago, and they had Roger Clemens come out. I think Roy Oswalt was there as well. That's pretty cool. I like what they've been doing. I hope they go on, maybe they will. I don't know. But
a tour.
A tour. I would love to see them play at Busch.
Oh, how many people did they have? Any idea what they had down in Houston?
I don't know the numbers, but from the video I watched, it looked like sold out.
Well, my understanding is when they are playing in the minor leagues or whatever they're doing, independent baseball, every place they go and when they're at home, it's sold out. It's like a tough ticket to get.
Yeah.
So if you're a tough ticket to get, you know what? Then that's fun.
Yeah, you're doing something good.
You're doing something right. So I don't mind it one bit. Question 2, please.
Question number 2.
All right, this one comes from the 314. Do you see a time coming in baseball where they totally restructure how the pitching staff is used? Like, for example, maybe they only expect starters to go 3 innings and they piggyback and have a couple of guys that can do that, followed by a bunch of short guys.
I think you'd wear out your pitching staff if you did that. Mm-hmm. So the way that rosters are currently constructed and how many pitchers you can take on that roster, you would wear guys out. Now they have, you know what? They have changed it already, though. You think about the opener in baseball. The opener's there, and you're going to run through probably 5 or 6 guys. And there's certain teams, like under Gabe Kapler, they did that all the time with the San Francisco Giants. I don't know if it's necessarily the right way to go about it in regular season play, but think about how you play in postseason baseball in the playoffs. I mean, guys don't go deep, man.
No.
It's 2 times through a lineup, and they are out. So it's a shortened portion of the schedule, potentially. So you got to go for it when you're in the game.
Yeah.
I understand that, but for the long haul of a season, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think you'd wear out your pitchers.
Do you like the third time through the order, taking a guy out. I
can't stand it.
I can't either.
I can't stand it.
No, I don't get it.
I got to trust my eyes.
Yes.
The eye test still works. If someone's dealing, keep them in the game. I got no problem with that. Keep them in the game. I mean, it's the one that's always brought up is Blake Snell in the World Series. Yes. Everybody's going to remember that. Kevin Cash took him out, and I'm sitting there going, really? That didn't make any sense. And I think here locally, you would say the Quintana start in Game 1 against the Phillies.
I know Carey is definitely upset over that.
I didn't like it. I mean, I went to Ali the next day, and he was great in terms of why he made moves, and he explained it to me. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I mean, that's the beauty of baseball. One thing that Tim McCarver would do during games is he'd say some outrageous stuff. No doubt about that. But I talked to him after games, and I said, do you really feel that way? And he goes, yeah. He goes, everything's not just in a perfect alignment during baseball. And if you have an opinion and it's wrong, he said, so what?
Right.
What do I don't care. It's my opinion. So that was my opinion on a few of these things, that they didn't keep guys in longer than I thought they should have kept them in longer than they did.
One of my favorite Tim McCarver moments is actually a moment that I didn't know existed until pretty recently, but it was Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, and he brings up Joe Buck talking about Jack Buck's call when I believe the Blue Jays, was it Joe
Minnesota.
Carter? Oh, it was Minnesota.
Yep.
That's right. Where he hits the home run and
Kirby Puckett
hits the home run. I was thinking of Joe Carter. He hits the home run. And he's like, well, we'll see you tomorrow night. And he brought that up, but then it ends up happening later in the game. I think that's really cool from a broadcaster's perspective, is to call your shot almost without actually intentionally doing it, just bringing things up, like just bringing stories up, and it ended up shaping that specific game, and it goes down in Cardinals lore forever.
The greatest first guess I think I've ever heard an announcer make is by Tim McCarver, and I've told this story before, and I've talked to him on the air. We talked about it. It was great. One time, there was a gentleman pitcher, right-handed, had a really good cutter, and a lefty was at the plate, and he said, they're playing way too deep in left field. And I said, you think so? I said, he's in a step or two. He said, no, he's still way too deep in left field. Sure enough, what happens? Little cutter in on his hands, bloops a single out to left. And he said, Dan, that reminds me. And I of course, he's kind of joking. He said, but Mariano Rivera. And I said, yeah, he had a hell of a cutter. And he said, well, do you remember in Game 7 of the World Series? And it was the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Yankees. And he said they're playing Jeter too far back. He said he needs to be playing in, and the left fielder needs to be playing in. And just like I said, cutter in on a lefty. A lot of times guys bloop it over the shortstop's head. He needs to be playing in, or at least expecting that type of play.
Right.
And so sure enough, what happens? Little bloop over his head. Luis Gonzalez wins it, and the rest is history. But it was one of the great first guesses ever in the history of sports.
So they said the same thing when Berkman came up in that Game 6. They said, why are they playing so deep? They have a no doubles defense when you don't need that to happen right now.
Exactly.
And then Berkman hits the little bloop, shallow center field, and the rest is history. They tie the game. I think it's funny when announcers. There's one in particular that I remember. I think it was a Blue Jays announcer like years ago. He made like a guess. He's like, he's going to hit a 3-2 pitch. It's going to go the second story and whatever, on this particular at bat.
It makes you watch. It makes you watch.
It's funny.
A couple times I would always guess, and I probably had 150 guesses and 2 came true, but man, I laid claim to those 2.
Oh, yeah.
You see, I know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
The 618 says, I heard there are 41,000 in Houston for the Bananas game.
That's awesome.
Yeah. 41,000. Apparently they played in Kansas City, the Savannah Bananas last year, but not at Kauffman, some other venue that was smaller, but they sold it out. So some people helping us out on the text line. By the way, we only got to 2 of the Sports Six Pack.
Let's roll it over.
We'll have number 3 coming up. It's the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN.
question.
It's time for the Fast Lane to answer your sports questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
Asking me all these weird questions.
Answer the question.
Answer the question.
Answer me!
The Sports Six-Pack is now.
Well, we only got through 2 of them, so 4 more to go on the Sports Six-Pack. Danny Mac and Marshy filling in for Jamie Rivers. He's traveling with the Blues. Staltz is down on vacation in Florida, and Carey Davis a little bit under the weather, so he hopefully will be back tomorrow here on 101 ESPN. Marshy, question 3, please.
Question number 3.
Danny brought up Mariano Rivera. From the 636, what is the hardest pitch to hit in Major League Baseball?
How about a guy that's throwing 105?
Yeah, that would be pretty tough.
Do you remember Jordan Hicks against Odubel Herrera a few years ago when the Phillies were in town and he could hit? And Hicks was throwing, and he would later tell me he saw the velocity being posted on the board at Busch Stadium. And it got to, I think, like 105 or something like that. It was the hardest pitch ever thrown in baseball. I got to think that that's it. I mean, guys with nasty cutters, guys with nasty breaking balls, great changeups, a knuckleball. I mean, you can make a case for any of these things, but I think even though it can't be straight, and that's the one thing I would say with Jordan Hicks, his ball had great movement, that real tough sinking action at throwing it like 104 miles an hour. That's impossible to hit.
Yeah.
That's got to be it, right? What do you think?
This is like, for me, I'm trying to answer this without saying like the obvious high velocity fastball. It's like saying who's the best player on the Blues, not named Jordan Bennington. That's how I'm trying to look at it. I would say, and you brought up Mariano Rivera, maybe like an outside cutter. Do you think?
Yeah.
Like that one's tailing outside and then it boom backdoor.
So you're thinking like Greg Maddux.
Yeah, just it's out like
I think about Greg Maddux with a left-handed batter and the ball literally looks like it's going to hit him in the hip
and then just
breaks right over the plate.
That's not what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
I'm thinking of a right-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher, left-handed batter, and you're busting them inside, trying to bust them inside the whole time. You're throwing that cutter, and then you throw a cutter outside that just hits the far side of the plate, just
guy gives
right
up
on the
it.
paint. Yeah, he thinks it's a ball.
Yeah.
To me, like that's mine. I'm sure there's other ones. Obviously, a curveball, tough to hit. A backdoor slider. Just there's so many different ones. And I think that's what I find interesting about pitching is there's so many different ways to get people out. But nowadays we just think of like high fastball, 100.
The game
try and hit it.
The game has changed so much, and I was thinking of a split-fingered fastball. Splitter would be pretty nasty. Randy Johnson slider 314. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
I love this one. The toughest pitch to hit is strike one. Question 4, please.
Question number 4.
From the 636, do you guys enjoy to fish? What kind of fish do you enjoy to fish for? I personally enjoy trout fishing.
I love to fish. It's like a pastime of mine. Are you an outdoorsman at all?
Probably not compared to a lot of people. I like enjoying, I like to go out and, I like to hike here and there sometimes. I'll camp here and there sometimes. I like to fish. I've never been hunting, but I'm not
opposed to it. Yeah.
Like bow hunting would be really cool.
It's fun. I love to hunt.
I love fishing though. I don't do it enough to be like an expert at it, but I just really love getting out on the boat or going out to dock and just chilling and throwing something out there, and maybe you get something, maybe you don't, but that's the beauty in fishing, right?
I love bass fishing. I've never been fly fishing.
I've been fishing for muskie up in Minnesota. That was really fun.
I want to go to Alaska. I want to go king salmon fishing.
Oh, that would be cool.
That would be fun.
That'd be really cool.
I did do some fishing down in Florida, caught a barracuda, caught a shark. That was probably the most unique fish I've ever caught. Scared the hell out of me, too. Question 5, please.
Question number 5.
From the 314, what would you want to see more? A Cardinal hit 50 home runs this season or steal 100 bases?
Oh, for me, it's easy. steal 100 because you just don't see it anymore. And I remember, the days of Vince Coleman and Willie and Ozzie and all these guys running wild. It was so entertaining. So I've seen 70. I've seen 65. And I see other guys now hitting 50 or more home runs. I don't see guys stealing 100 bases. Could it get back to that? The one guy I think about is Victor Scott. I mean, 113 bases last year between minor league baseball and the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah.
Now, this is Major League Baseball. I get it. And pop-up times are going to be better, accurate arms, guys that probably hold runners on better. I understand all that, but I'd love to see him get a try at it. I think it'd be fun to watch.
I agree with you, but I also look at if a Cardinal has 50 home runs, they are probably a playoff team.
And the guy that comes to mind would be Nolan Gorman?
I think so. I think he's probably the one that could do it, which means he's having a great year, and he's building off what he's done the past 2 seasons.
He'd have to do it off some lefties, though, too.
He wouldn't.
Are
they going to give him the chance?
You got to play every day or at least be, answering the bell, let's say 145 to 150 games. And you know what? Some of those games are against lefties. 70% of the league is right-handed. But you're going to get your lefty in there, and they're going to make sure that they're going to match up late in games with a lefty with him at the plate, too. So he's going to get his fair share of lefties.
By the way, we did get a text about one of the pitches that would be hard to hit is an ephus pitch.
Ephus would be tough. I thought about that.
Yeah, ephus and a knuckleball.
I said that. I thought that would be kind of like a Tim Wakefield knuckleball, and it's really working. You know who's got the best knuckleballs are infielders. Seriously. When they play catch, the monotony of playing catch and getting loose, so you start messing with the ball. They start throwing knuckleballs at each other. And the thing is just dancing all over the place. They've got awesome knuckleballs. So, yeah, they do. And we'll wrap it up with question 6, please.
Question number 6.
All right, from the 314, Dan, what do you think of Jordan Kyrou, and will he be a Blue next season?
I do. I'm gonna say that this is somewhat of a one-off season for him. He's gonna have to learn to play the entire ice. Now, it hasn't happened yet, and you're better at this than I am, but this is kind of who he is. And I've always felt like he got overshadowed a little bit by some of the other players that you had.
Absolutely.
And now that he's been thrust into, okay, you're a guy that's got the 8 years, you got the big contract, now you have to live up to it. This has been a little bit who he is. Now, I know the numbers are down, but I just kind of think he was overshadowed in years past. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's where I'm at.
I completely agree. I think that he could get away with some of the things that he was doing and has continued to do because you had guys like Ryan O'Reilly. You had other players that took the load off of Tarasenko. Like, because of the talent that is the lack of talent compared to other rosters that the Blues have right now, he's just more exposed.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And you see a play like last night, you see a penalty taken.
Can't happen.
That can't happen. And he was kind of invisible the entire game last night.
Yep.
Up until that point. And that's when you're like, oh, man, that's a terrible penalty. Like, what is he doing?
You know who's had an unbelievable year? Robert Thomas.
He has.
5-on-5, this team is not very good, and he has found a way to put up points. Now, he's playing on a top line, and there's some talent around him, don't get me wrong, but he has had, because he's matched up with the other team's top line and top centers and going against some of the best players in the world and still putting up numbers. I just think his two-way game has been great, and I think quietly he's had one of the best seasons in recent. I mean, I don't think it's too bold of a statement. I think it's one of the best seasons that a Blue has had in the last 5 to 10 years.
I agree, and it isn't really being talked about enough
at all
because of how they've been playing.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate. I really like him with Braden Shin.
I do too.
And Jake Neighbors. I loved that first line last night, and I hope that they can continue to build off of what they did last night and push their way through the rest of these games and hopefully make the playoffs. So,
are you ready for the Gauntlet?
I'm ready for the Gauntlet. It's just me today, so Daniel will be asking the questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully no
Hobby Boolin?
No Hobby Boolin answers or whatnot. So we'll see how that goes.
How do you spell Hobby Boolin? That was the first question to Joey Vitale. Khbboulin.
If I had to say, let's see here.
Oubilon? Habibulin?
I would say, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say Khabibulon.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's IN.
Is it IN?
At the end, yeah. I think I'm right. By the way, do you have a contestant for the Gauntlet?
We do. We do have a contestant, so we're ready to go.
Okay, let's do it. 401 in St. Louis. The Gauntlet coming up on 101 ESPN.
Four warriors, four categories, one challenger. Can you master the Gauntlet?
The Gauntlet is powered by Master, your hometown source for business communications for more than 30 years. Visit Mastor.com.
You realize, Marshy, at some point I'm going to screw this thing up.
Dan, I have full faith in you. I think today is going to go great. Before we get Jake on, who is our contestant, remember, only give them the options
when
if
they
ask for it.
Yesterday was a train wreck.
Oh, no, it was great. I think the listeners loved it.
It was an absolute train wreck, and they loved it. All right, Jake, are you with us here on 101 ESPN?
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Jake. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice again.
Well, I appreciate that. Are you ready to take on Marshy?
Me and Marshy have some unfinished business. He already knows I'm ready.
Oh, wow. All right, Jake, tell Marshy to spin the wheel.
Marshy, do your job. You know what to do.
Wow.
All right, I'll get out of here.
Marshy is
And
heading
in the meantime, I do want to say, on behalf of everybody in St. Louis, it really is great to hear you again, brother.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me, more than you know, and thank you very much. And because of that, I'm going to be pulling for you very hard to beat Marshy here. Let's do it. Are you ready to go?
Baseball.
It is. I'm sorry, it's random.
Better than hockey.
Okay, here we go. What is the only species of bear found in Missouri? What is the only species of bear found in Missouri?
Black bear.
Final answer? Okay. All right, hold on. I'm writing down your stuff. Okay. All right, question 2. The king of ragtime actually studied music and enjoyed some of his greatest success here in the Show Me State. What was his name?
I'm just going to shoot and say Chuck Berry.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Okay. All right. Question 3. According to a recent Department of Agriculture report, what is the top peach-producing state?
Georgia. Final answer.
Okay. And question 4. In the nursery rhyme, Ba Ba Black Sheep, how many bags full of wool are there?
Well, this is where you don't mess up, and you can actually give me the options.
Is it 3, 5, or 9?
Let's go 9. Final answer.
All right. Let's bring Marshy back in. If I can get his attention.
That's usually hard to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We're just doing a little fill in here on the fast lane, just trying to, get through it. Marshy is paying attention now and making his way into the studio. And Marshy, pack a lunch against Jake.
That was really quick.
I know. We need to extend this segment a little bit.
Marshy, answer me this and be honest. Where did you end your birthday?
Where did I what? End my birthday?
Yeah.
Oh, I ended it at home.
Before that, I assumed you got an Uber from the east side.
Wow.
Whoa, no.
You know what he had, though, Jake? He had a nice cake, and he brought it in that was made by his mother.
I did. Some peanut butter cake. It was pretty good.
Get your head out of the gutter, Jake. Get your head out of the gutter.
I listened to Jamie and Marshy too long. It happened.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit.
That makes sense.
You ready to go, Marshy?
I'm ready to go. Here we go.
What is the only species of bear found in Missouri?
The only species, really. Let's go with the options.
Options are brown bear, grizzly bear, American black bear.
I was thinking brown bear. I'll go with brown bear. Final answer.
Final answer. Okay. Question 2. The king of ragtime actually studied music and enjoyed some of his greatest success here in the Show Me State. What was his name?
The king of ragtime. Ooh. W.C. Handy? I don't know. Let's use the options.
John Coltrane, Louis Armstrong, or Scott Joplin?
Let's go, I think the key word is the king of ragtime. The problem is I don't know who that is. So I'm going to go, you said Louis Armstrong was an option?
John Coltrane, Louis Armstrong, Scott Joplin.
I'll go Louis Armstrong. Final answer.
Okay. Question 3. According to a recent Department of Agriculture report, what is the top peach producing state?
Georgia. Final answer.
In question 4, in the nursery rhyme, Ba Ba Black Sheep, how many bags full of wool are there?
Is it 3 bags full? Let's go with... Oh, man, I don't think I listened to this one as a child. We had different songs we were singing. I'll just say 3. I think that comes to mind. It's probably wrong, but whatever. 3, final answer.
Okay, let's run through the questions here and the answers as away we go here with the Gauntlet. What is the only species of bear found in Missouri? Marsh, you said the brown bear.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, no options, took the American black bear.
Ooh.
It is the American black bear.
Good job, Jake.
So Jake is up 2-0. The king of ragtime actually studied music and enjoyed some of his greatest success here in the Show Me State. What was his name? Marsh, you took the options and went with Louis Armstrong. Jake did not take the options, and I can't remember who he picked, but it was wrong. The answer was Scott Joplin. Still 2-0 Jake. According to a recent Department of Agriculture report, what is the top peach-producing state? Jake went no options. Went with Georgia. You, Marsh, went with Georgia as well. The answer is California.
Oh.
Jake is still up 2-0. In the nursery rhyme, Baba Black Sheep, how many bags full of wool are there? Jake, you went with the options with 9. Marshy did not take the options, and he went with 3. The answer is 3.
Whoa!
We have a tie.
A little walk-off, Jake.
Are we ready to go, gentlemen?
I'm ready to go. So, Dan, for reference, you'll ask the question. I will write the question down on this whiteboard. I will then show you the question, and then Jake will give his answer, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, you ready?
Closest to the pin, right?
Here we go. Closest to the pin.
Closest to the pin, tiebreaker. Here it is. How many minutes are there in a normal year? How many minutes are there in a normal year?
Oh, my goodness. Hang on, so... Oh, jeez. I'm going to go with... I'm going to write it down right now. I have... All right, I don't know.
All right, let's see what you got, Marshy.
So I have my answer. That's my answer. So, Jake, we'll need your answer now.
I'm about as clueless as Marshy for once. I'm going to go 36,725.
Okay. Marshy.
Yes.
How many minutes are there in a normal year? You went with 270,000 minutes.
Yep.
Jake, you went with 36,725. The answer is 525,000 minutes in a year.
Yep. Knew I was way off.
Marshy,
you have chosen
know what to do.
Poorly.
You lose.
That was one of the great matchups we've had on Random in a long time.
That was tough. I have zero idea.
For all the trash I've talked to Marshy all this time, I felt bad because I missed his birthday almost.
Well, that's okay,
It's
though.
okay.
You're very complimentary to me, and really that's all that matters.
And I beat you today, so it's all is well, right?
Hey, so, Marsh, take that win. When you go back to Maryville, make sure your director actually does some work.
You can't say that, Marshy, to your director.
I won't. I'll just text it.
Hey, Jake, thanks
I'll
for
do it
playing.
for you.
Thanks for playing, and thanks for listening. Thanks,
Nice to
buddy.
talk to you, Dan. Have
You
a good
too.
day.
Thank you so much. That is Jake. He lost, though, in the fight to Marsh, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. It is 4:16. This is the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. We're going to talk about your preferred opening day lineup. Get your text in, 399-9646. It's 101 ESPN. Marshy, what do you want to see on your opening day lineup outside of production? How would you line up your opening day lineup? I got mine. I want to see what you think.
All right, so I think, and maybe we can go one by one here so we can agree. I think Brendan Donovan is going to be my leadoff hitter.
I got him at second base and leading off.
My second hitter, and this is where things get interesting because I've had a lot of people talk with me about them wanting Jordan Walker to bat second. I push back a little bit on that, but I get where they're coming from.
Going to get more pitches to hitting in front of Goldie, Arenado, Gorman. Yeah, I can see that. Wouldn't surprise me if you saw that.
So in recent, we've seen Paul Goldschmidt here in the 2 spot. But we talked about it yesterday, having that left, right. I think I like that more than Goldie being 2, than Gorman being 2. So I'm gonna keep Goldie at the 2 spot.
That's where I have him playing first base, batting second. So we're in agreement. Donovan, Goldschmidt. I'll take over here at third.
Yes.
So I'll go batting third, the designated hitter. I'd go Nolan Gorman. So I'm separating my lefties, and that's what we talked about yesterday.
And then obviously Nolan Arenado, he's batting cleanup for us.
Yep, got him at cleanup. I got Contreras hitting fifth, and I was kind of torn on this. Do I want to go? I could make a combination of like Walker, Burleson, or Contreras batting fifth, but I'm going with Contreras going fifth, so that gives me Donovan, Goldie, Gorman, Arenado, and Contreras.
Sixth, I think I'm putting Jordan Walker there.
That's where I got him. Playing right field, sixth. I got in left field, this is opening day, I've got Alec Burleson.
Do you? Okay.
Opening day lineup, I got Alec Burleson. So he'd be, for me, batting seventh.
I think in this spot, I would have Dylan Carlson playing left field.
Okay.
Which ultimately means that Victor Scott is in my lineup. And to me, I think he bats eighth, and then Mason Wynn would be my shortstop batting ninth.
So I had a combination. I put it down as my eighth hitter is Carlson/Scott. So if Scott's here, he's eighth, and then Wynn would be ninth. Boy, that's some pretty good speed at the bottom of your lineup. You roll that thing over, it's pretty good.
And then you have Donovan, who is an on-base guy, and then obviously you have Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Gorman, and Nolan Arenado, who can put the ball out of the yard.
If Victor Scott is here, and you just say, hey, we're going for it with this kid, would you put him as your leadoff man? I mean, that's something to think about. If he's going to be here, now your lineup rolls over, after the first time, and it's gets jumbled a little bit, if you will, and what happens in games. But, boy, I'd be tempted to put him at the top of my lineup and see what he could do.
I wouldn't hate that. I think I would like him to just sort of ease into the major league level first.
And I'm with you on that. Yep.
But I would not be opposed to having him lead off, maybe a few weeks into the season once he gets going, if that is the case. I would love to see that. But I also don't mind having speed at the back end of your lineup to then carry over. Yeah.
Once it rolls over,
it doesn't matter.
I love Donovan at the top, though. I love the fact that, and I said this yesterday, he reminds me of Carpenter when he was at the top of the lineup. Takes a ton of pitches. Guys sitting behind him, they can view that if they're watching, which they should be, and not in a video room, see what's happening with a guy on the mound and pick up intricacies, how he's approaching a left-handed batter, the fact that he puts the ball in play, the fact that he gives you just a really good at-bat at the top of the lineup. I'm looking at Donovan being my leadoff man.
So here, this is an interesting one from the 314. What do you think about this, Dan? Okay, we have Mason Wynn leading off, Jordan Walker batting second, Paul Goldschmidt third, Nolan Arenado is your cleanup hitter. Then you have Wilson Contreras, Nolan Gorman, Brendan Donovan, DC, and Dylan Carlson, and then Victor Scott.
I like the idea of mixing up my second batter if I've got Goldie, Arenado, 3-4, and maybe it's Jordan Walker. I said that a few months ago, putting him in front of those guys to get more pitches to hit, then presumably doing more damage. I could see that with Gorman, too. I don't like the idea of back-to-back lefties, which would be my concern with that. But that if you've got Goldie Arenado 3-4, you're going to see some pitches to hit if you're batting second. That's just the way it is.
We got a text from the 314. Can we take the training wheels off of our superstar in the making and lock in Walker to a top 4 lineup spot?
Thought about that too.
Do you think he's there right now after what you saw last season?
I think he will be. But I'm kind of with you, too. It's his second year in the big leagues. It's time to go. And if you feel he's going to be one of the most productive players in your lineup, why not put him towards the top and get him more at-bats?
But you can also make the same argument for Nolan Gorman,
which is what I was saying before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I could also see moving down Contreras to 6th and putting Walker hitting 5th. You know,
I wouldn't mind that either.
Put him in a cleanup spot like that. When I say cleanup, not batting 4th, but I mean able to clean up some of the runs batted in and doing some damage there and providing you a little protection with Contreras behind you. He is a young player, so we talk about taking the training wheels off. One of the ways to do it, to ease him in, is to have protection behind him, which is something I think that is advantageous for him, but will they do it? Time will tell.
But also you do want somewhat of a sure thing protecting Nolan Arenado as well. And you have Wilson Contreras, who I believe led the team in OPS last season. I also like that. I also don't mind having Jordan Walker down in the lineup because, one, it lengthens your lineup. If you have that much excitement and confidence in Jordan Walker this season, I'm okay with him being in a spot where there's not a ton of pressure, but he also can contribute. It lengthens your lineup out, especially if you do have Victor Scott and Mason Wynn, 2 question marks from an offensive side of things. We don't know what they'd look like. I think that also would work.
I hear these names and I wonder, how are they 19th in baseball in offense? This is a good offensive team. It should be.
It should be. I think that's what was so frustrating last year, is because on paper they are a pretty damn good lineup. But
you had down years with Arenado and Goldie, and that's when you put those guys in the middle of the lineup and they're not producing at what they normally do in their careers, that's what you're going to get. Now, injuries were a part of it, but I just look at it right now and I'm thinking, this is a good lineup. This should be able to generate some runs, and it should be able to keep them in games. Time will tell. We'll see. I think Arenado and Goldie have to get back to some of the levels they were a couple of years ago. And if they do, it could look a little bit different. You know, they had over 1,100 runners left on base last year. They were terrible with the bases loaded. You would think that you would think that some of those things change going into this season.
Do you think their approach changes with 2 outs? Or just a runner on third, like runners in scoring position? It was not all too great last year, Dan. Do you think they have a different approach, or do you think they just stick with what they know because they're the best in the world?
I think they stick with what they know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's a one-off, maybe it is a little bit of decline, but even these guys in their decline should be upper echelon hitters in what they do. Now, Goldie is 36. Arenado, I think, turns 34 in the season, maybe early in the season. So you're expecting a lot out of those guys. They're paid a ton of money, and they should produce. It's really that simple. Coming up, we're going to talk it over with JR, Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic. The Blues' tough loss last night. We'll get into that and much more. This is The Fast Lane on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Andrew Marsh. It's time for a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Blues lost last night to the Colorado Avalanche by a final score of 4-3. They'll take on the Ottawa Senators tomorrow. Pregame starts at 5. Puck drop is at 6, and you can catch all of the action right here on 101 ESPN. We're going to dive into last night's game against the Colorado Avalanche with our Blues insider, Jeremy Rutherford. JR, coming in the fast lane, coming up next right here on 101 ESPN. I'm Andrew Marsh, and this Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Notes and nuggets. It's time for the Rutherford Report with our Blues insider, Jeremy Rutherford. Brought to you by Scott Lee Heating Company, a proud Mitsubishi Electric Elite contractor.
.434 in St. Louis. Time check is brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers. I'm Danny Mack. That's Marshy. Rivers is traveling with the Blues. Stalter's on vacation. Carey Davis can barely speak, so they brought us in. And we say hello on the celebrity line to Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic. JR, good afternoon. How we doing?
Doing great, Danny Mack and Marshy, and hopefully Carey will get better, Anthony will get back, and Riv will get back home at some point. But in the meantime, enjoy talking to you guys.
It sounds like you don't really like us on the air.
I do.
Okay, just making sure. The Blues dropped a tough one last night, 4-3. Just your initial impressions of what you saw last night.
Well, Danny, I thought that they played a pretty good game overall. I mean, that's a juggernaut, that Colorado team. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. I mean, they're my pick for the Stanley Cup along with Florida from the East. And just watching them, I mean, I think Braden Shen said it best after the game. It almost feels like every one of them is 6'3", 220 pounds and skates like the wind. So I felt like that's one that the Blues could and probably should lose. But I think big picture, they showed well, came up a little short, and you could point to the mistakes that they made that cost them the game.
JR, what did you think of Jake Neighbors stepping up on that first line and playing with Robert Thomas and Braden Shen? They immediately got a scoring opportunity, and then Braden Shen buried it.
Yeah, I thought he was great. He continues to be great. I think he's been one of their best players all season long. And, of course, lately in the blue paint, I said to him today at his locker stall, guys, I said, hey, I heard on the radio on 101 today, some people are starting to call that blue paint area the neighborhood, and he got a chuckle out of that.
I like it.
That, he's going to make that part of his game for sure. But I know Alex Ferrario, Brandon Kiley being two of them have kind of pined for Jake Neighbors being on that top line. Mm-hmm. And, look, it made a lot of sense. He's got that type of talent and can play with these guys. Drew Bannister wanted to keep Jordan Kyrou in that top line right wing spot, but last night made the switch. It paid dividends with that sweet goal between him and Braden Shen.
The Blues have made it fun here down the stretch. Mathematically still alive. Handful of games left. A huge one coming up with Vegas. They've got Ottawa and Minnesota on the road before Vegas here in St. Louis. Just, JR, the realistic chances of making the playoffs, what do you think they are?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. You got 13 games left. Tomorrow night against Ottawa is a game that you just have to have. If you don't win it, you have no business talking about the playoffs. And then back-to-back, just massive games with Minnesota, in Minnesota on Saturday, and then Monday with here against Vegas. Those are two teams that are directly above you that you're chasing, that you have to beat if you want to be in the playoffs. The Blues right now 1 point behind Minnesota, played the same number of games. 4 points behind Vegas, and Vegas has one game in hand here. So you're looking at 13 games, and you got to go 10-3, 9-4, I think, to be in the conversation.
And, JR, to win those games, you have to have everyone firing on all cylinders right now. Obviously, that first line looked good last night. The fourth line, how about them getting some goals? And then the third line as well. They had a shift last night that was incredible. They end up getting that goal. The first goal, Nathan Walker steps on the ice. But that second line, we saw a few mistakes from the second line, Buchnevich and Jordan Kyrou. What did you see from them last night? And just how important are they for this team if they are going to make a push for the playoffs?
Yeah, and that's a couple of those mistakes that I just talked about. You got to like a lot of things about last night's game. First of all, that top line, Also, the fourth line. I was waiting for Sundqvist to get a goal, too, along with Walker and Torpenko. You could have had a fourth-line hat trick last night, but that didn't happen. And then I think everybody who's watched that third line lately, they've done really well with Hayes in the middle of Kapanen, and I know Saad was down there at one point, and then he got moved up. A lot of possession time from that group here lately. But the bugaboo last night were the two big mistakes. One of them, the Jordan Kyrou penalty, the tripping penalty that leads to a Rantanen power play goal. That's a penalty that Drew Bannister said afterwards, just can't happen at that point in the game. And then Buchnevich, like, you love him as a player. He does a lot for this team. But that pass to the middle of the zone, the turnover that led to the game-winning goal, he had different options, and it's just tough to see that play being made at that time.
What have you thought about the play of Braden Shen here recently? He's moved up, and it just looks like it's kind of got him going, a little spark to his game.
Yeah, Danny, I think we've seen him bounce back and forth from center to wing at different times. Obviously, he's played mostly in the middle, but it just seems like when he plays on the wing, he's more of a direct player, but more so than that, he's putting the puck on net. And I think, it's not like he's worrying about his line mates too much because he does his job. But when he's playing center, it's kind of a pass-first situation. We've already seen him come down that wall and let go of a couple nice shots. He scored on one of them. Jake Neighbors tipped another one in. So he's doing things that are creating offense from that left wing spot that we didn't necessarily see at center.
JR, you tweeted out earlier today that Zach Dean is expected to make his NHL debut in Ottawa. He is going to replace Oscar Sundqvist in the lineup. How exciting is Zach Dean to finally get back or finally get into the lineup? He's had to wait here a few days. And also, what does this mean for Oscar Sundqvist? Is it because he didn't score and get that hat trick for the fourth line last night that he's not in the lineup?
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw this on the internet today, but a couple people were on there asking me, hey, are you teaching Zach Dean how to be a sports writer? Because all he does is sit in the press box.
Terrible.
But, I don't think he doesn't want to go that route for sure. Let me tell you that. But he is expected to get in the game tomorrow. He skated on that fourth line with Torpenko and Walker today in practice. And as you touched on, he's going to replace Sundqvist in the lineup tomorrow night. I'll get to that in 1 second. But looking forward to seeing him play. The Blues made the trade with Vegas last year at the deadline, sent Ivan Barbashev to the Golden Knights. He goes and wins the Stanley Cup. The Blues get some guy named Zach Dean that people don't know about, but he's a former first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now you're going to get a chance to see him. He's a good skater, good player. Has really kind of, when he turned professional this year, this is his first season professional, he's figuring out the game. And he figured it out as much as he could in Springfield. Now they want to get a look at him. He's going to come in for Sundqvist, and it's nothing wrong with Sundqvist. Drew Bannister said today that maybe his game has dipped just a little bit. They think that the schedule's led to that, a little bit of fatigue, so they want to give him a reset. But Drew Bannister did qualify it, guys, by saying that Sundqvist would be back in the lineup Saturday against Minnesota.
Do you think that if the Blues are still hanging around, we may see Jimmy Snuggerud?
I think there's a chance. So Snuggy is going to be in the regionals with Minnesota here at the end of the month, and depending on how long the Golden Gophers go in the playoffs, whether they make it to the Frozen Four or not, is going to depend on is going to determine rather how much time is going to be left in the Blues schedule when that Minnesota season ends. Is it 2 games? Is it 5 games? What makes it worth it to the Blues in terms of burning a year on that contract? So we'll see, but still a little bit to play out with his season at Minnesota and how long it lasts.
JR, anything you're working on as of recent?
Yeah, I actually spent some time today. Guys, 1,000 games in the NHL. That's a milestone. We all know it. And Nick Leddy is going to reach it Saturday at Xcel Energy Center in Minnesota. And how about this? The timing of this, the astronomical odds that he would play game number 1,000 25 minutes from where he grew up in Eden Prairie. I've been on the phone most of the day speaking with Islander teammates, Patrick Kane, a former teammate in Chicago. Lots of good stories about Nick Leddy. I know that when you're watching the here and now and you're watching the games and you get caught up in the defensive pairs and how they're playing and how's Nick Leddy doing, it's easy to be critical of a guy or just not think, you're excited about some players on this team. But when you make these phone calls and you find out just how this guy grew up and how much work he put in it to get here and some of the funny stories along the way, and then you're going to see him get rewarded with this milestone achievement on Saturday. So much fun to work on these stories, and this should be up at The Athletic Saturday.
And also, everyone can follow you on Twitter, JP Rutherford, at JP Rutherford on Twitter. And if they see your tweets, are they coming from your computer or your phone? I know yesterday, apparently the first time in, 19 years you forgot your computer at a game?
Oh, goodness, guys. If you could have seen my face when I got out of my truck at Enterprise Center last night and looked in my back seat and did not see my backpack or my laptop. And listen, my hands look like catcher's mitts, so if you could picture me using my cell phone last night, and every time they scored a goal, I was kind of like, dang it, because I knew I had to get the sausage fingers out on the cell phone. So not much fun last night.
Hey, what's it like covering the team right now as we kind of wrap this up? But just the energy in the room and the fact that young guys are kind of getting what is pseudo playoff experience and some of the things that go along with at least being mathematically alive down the stretch.
Yeah, just a transition period. I think that everybody wants to make the playoffs. They realize what's at stake, and they like the game last night against Colorado. For the most part, they've been playing pretty well here lately. So I think they see what's in front of them and what can be possible. But I think bigger picture, you talk to each of them, they probably know that if you step back, you can see what the Blues are trying to do here, build here with a lot of these young players. So, Dan, covering the Cardinals as long as you have, you understand that, you go through these stretches where you're just in a bit of a transition. The Blues are in it right now, but that doesn't mean that they can't win a few games here down the stretch and get into this playoff.
JR, thanks for your time as always, and looking forward to the piece on Nick Leddy this weekend.
Sounds good. Thanks, boys.
You got it. That's Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. Coming up, which athletes have redefined their respective game? We're going to talk about that. Maybe set this up, Marshy. Set it up. What were you thinking here on this particular segment?
So, of course, we have the NCAA tournament, and we've had this discussion before. Caitlin Clark has made women's basketball a big thing now, and everyone wants to see what's going to happen with her and what Iowa is going to do in this upcoming weekend and hopefully the following weekends for her. And, of course, Shohei Ohtani's with the Dodgers now, and I mean, he's the
now
next
you're
best
taking
thing.
all my people here.
Well,
that
I'm throwing it out there. So
okay.
I'm throwing it out there. Maybe we'll come up with a few other names, and we'll look at the text line as well.
That's Marshy. I'm Danny Mack. We're filling in for Jamie Rivers, Anthony Stalter, and Carey Davis. This is the Fast Lane on 101 ESPN. good idea, Marshy, to think about athletes that have transformed their sports. And you got this idea thinking of Caitlin Clark and what she's done with the women's side of basketball. And she has. She's made it must-see TV. You wanted to see what she was doing. And it's brought a lot of attention on the women's side of basketball, which I think is great. I got 2 daughters. They're involved in sports. I think it's awesome. So I love it. And I love watching her play. I mean, she takes 2 steps over midcourt and is jacking up a 3.
Unbelievable.
And she makes the players around her better. It's not like just a one-man show out there.
Right.
You know, she does a lot of different things that makes it fun. I am surprised somehow the NCAA or Iowa didn't say to her, we're going to find a way to get you more money than what the WNBA is going to get you.
Right.
Come on back for one more year. Let's find a way, somehow, some way. NIL, I don't care what it is, but we need you for the sport here.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as a competitor, I'm curious what you think. I would bet she would say, I appreciate it, but I've done all I can possibly do here, and I'm a competitor, and that means I want to go up against the best in the world.
The only reason other than the money that I could see her wanting to come back, and we don't know yet because the season is not over, is the national championship. She has everything but a national championship.
Good point.
So if she gets that this year, I don't see any reason to want to go back to college, and she's not, but to your point, I would absolutely. I mean, that's a goal, right? Is to play professional sports, whatever sport you're in, and you're right there. You're going to be the number 1 pick. Go.
Shelf life, though, for an athlete is so minute for most. I mean, they're the outliers that play 10 or 15 years. I think some athletes are like, this is my God-given ability, and I'm going to maximize the most money I can get. And that's why I go back to the NCAA or Iowa saying, we're going to find a way to get you paid. One way or another, you'll make more money with us than the WNBA. The WNBA is saying, you come here and we've got national contracts for endorsements for you here too.
Absolutely.
So I see it's a two-way street. The one I was thinking of that would stand out to me for sure, you mentioned it before the break, is Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
I mean, he's just he's as unique as you get. To be able to be dominant on the mound and then to be one of the best hitters in the world and a power hitter at that. He had a couple of hits in his debut with the Dodgers today. He'd be my guy in baseball for sure.
Oh, absolutely. We got a text from the 314, Garrett Cole, pitching. His transformation with the 4-seam fastball up with high spin, high in the zone has transformed pitching. Maybe that's another name for baseball, but I think if we're pitching...
There's other guys, though, that have done that.
Right.
We're talking about the outliers.
Yes, and Shohei Ohtani is that. Now, I wonder if he can continue to be that with the injury. Will he be the same pitcher? I don't know, but for right now, he is that guy in baseball.
Steph Curry in basketball?
Absolutely. The 3-point.
Yeah.
The 3-point shot.
I mean, it's got to be that.
And speaking of Steph Curry, that run that he had with Davidson,
so much fun.
I wish they would have beaten Kansas.
And people had no idea who this kid was.
No.
I remember doing a Missouri game with John Sunvold. And John was one of the great shooters in the history of college basketball and still is statistically one of the great shooters in the NBA. And he turned to me, and we were doing a game with Mizzou and Davidson. He turned to me and he said, you know this kid? I said, yeah, his dad played in the NBA or whatever. He goes, he's a pro. I said, what are you talking about? He's a string bean. I go, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, watch him. We're watching warm-ups, and John says, watch him shoot. He goes, he's a pro. It's amazing when guys like that play at that level know when another player is going to be that good. And no one at that time was saying Steph Curry's going to be a pro, much less be an all-time great, which he is.
I don't even know if he is even in the conversation if he doesn't go on that run. Because no one knew who he was.
Exactly.
Like, no one from a national perspective knew who he was.
Correct.
Until they went
bases,
on the
media, all that stuff.
And then I believe he went back to school and did not recreate what they had for the year before, but was still pretty lights out.
Yeah.
And then gets drafted by Golden State, and the rest is history.
Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, that would come to mind for me, too. Two-way players in sports.
Absolutely. Bo Jackson, oh my goodness. Like, I wish I was around watching that guy play, to watch him throw a dart from the outfield. And then, of course, football, too.
Yeah. His run against Seattle, when he runs over Brian Bosworth, is one of the great scenes in sports. You know, it's no fault that Brian Bosworth got hurt. He had terrible shoulders coming out of Oklahoma and going to Seattle, but there was so much around him and the hype, and it's the Boz and all that stuff. And Bo Jackson just ran him over. Just ran him over.
Do you think we will ever see a two-sport athlete in today's modern sports?
Man, that's a good question. There's got to be like a football-baseball combination, maybe.
We had Kyler Murray a few years ago that could have done it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Jameis Winston was also a baseball player.
I was thinking Kyler Murray would have been the guy. There's guys that get drafted in baseball, but they're not high draft picks that are exceptional football players.
I wonder what Kyler Murray does if he doesn't get drafted by the Oakland Athletics. If he gets drafted by, let's say, the Yankees.
Yeah.
Does he play football or does he play baseball?
I think he plays football.
You think so?
I do.
Because of the money right away?
Exactly. You get the guarantee, you get the rookie deal. You know, you're going to be set up for life more than likely. The other one that comes to mind for me, you know I love golf, but Tiger Woods changed the game.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, as far as he could hit the ball, as well as his short game was, he could putt. I mean, he could do everything, and he was going to step on your throat every chance that he got. He changed the game of golf. He's still not the all-time winner in golf in championships, but you talk about the impact that he made and changing it worldwide. He made his debut in the Milwaukee Open, and that was the press conference when he said, "Hello, world." And we had I get goosebumps thinking about it. We had no idea. We'd seen a lot of it, USAMs, things that he did at Stanford, but nothing like. Well, I don't think you could have predicted what this was going to be like. It was incredible.
That reminds me a little bit of the whole Tom Brady, and we'll go back to the documentary that we've been watching. But when he goes up to Robert Kraft and he's like, "I'm the best pick that
you ever made,
that you've ever made," and talk about calling your shot. But speaking of football, though, who modern day athlete is Patrick Mahomes? That guy?
It's got to be.
I think so too.
Championships. Interchangeable parts at times offensively. I mean, he's had Kelsey that whole time, but wide receiver, you've had some guys go in and out, and they still find a way to win. But, you know, the thing is, though, there's been other QBs that have had great runs. I mean, Brady's had a great run. Russell Wilson, Elway was in a bunch of Super Bowls. And by no means am I saying that it to take away from Patrick Mahomes, but we're talking about being a transfer, you know, a guy that supersedes what you normally see.
Like, when I think of players that redefine their game, it's other teams going into drafts and looking and saying, how can we find the next Patrick Mahomes? How can we find, I mean, maybe not the next Shohei Ohtani. That's probably not going to happen. But how can we find these types of players? That's, to me, is the players that redefine their sport.
How about Venus and Serena?
Oh, absolutely.
That would come into play, too, with women's sports. Trying to think of somebody else that would come to mind. Just any of these two-way guys, definitely.
Definitely the two-way guys. Here's an interesting one from the 314. This was in my brain, too. Michael Vick.
Yeah. He was able to transform what a QB did at that time and had a cannon for an arm. He could do everything that you wanted. I remember the Virginia Tech Florida State national championship game, and he almost single-handedly brought them back. And you just don't see that, man. Guys that do it that much. That was a fun topic. I like that. I like that. All right, it's a fast lane on 101 ESPN. We've got basketball coming up at 5:30 tonight. So we've got Montana State, Grambling, and then Boise State and Colorado. 5:30, you can hear both games on 101 ESPN. The Blues will play tomorrow night pregame at 5, I believe, against the Ottawa Senators, and then they'll be at Minnesota. We'll have both of those games for you. And coming up next, the biggest question of the day.
Time for the Fast Lane's biggest question of the day.
Folks, the NCAA men's basketball tournament is here, and you can come watch the games tomorrow and Friday with 101 ESPN and Bud Light. This Thursday, a.k.a. tomorrow, you can join BK and Ferrario live from 11 to 2, and the Fast Lane from 2 to 6, broadcasting from Cybergs in O'Fallon, Illinois. And then on Friday, you can join both shows broadcasting live from Helen Fitzgerald's on Lindbergh. Come enjoy some food, a cold Bud Light, 101 giveaways, plenty of screens to watch all the games, and more. Get more details at 101ESPN.com.
That's Marshy. I'm Danny Mack. Jamie Rivers traveling with the Blues. Anthony Stalter on vacation, and Carey Davis just a bit under the weather. And so we are filling in until 5:30 tonight. At that point, it is college basketball. We'll have those games for you, Montana State and Grambling, as well as Boise State and Colorado. Before our biggest question of the day, Marshy, you got a little breaking news on Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, this is interesting. And Jamie, who is traveling, he threw this in our group chat. This is from Bob Nightingale. The Los Angeles Dodgers fire Ippy Mizuhara, Shohei Ohtani's longtime interpreter. Mizuhara was accused by Ohtani's attorneys of engaging in a massive theft of Ohtani's funds to place bets with an illegal bookmaker, according to the LA Times.
Yeah, that's a fireable offense. You want to get him out of the clubhouse. I mean, you think about it. The first thing that you see when you walk into a clubhouse, there's a list of rules. And number one on that list is, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can't bet on the game. And then if he's taking funds away from Shohei Ohtani and betting with an illegal bookie, I mean, you can't have him around, obviously.
No.
But that's not, if you're the Dodgers, that's the last thing that you want. And Shohei is pretty private, as we've seen.
Yeah.
And he is on his own way that he wants to handle the media. And I'll be really interested if they say to Shohei, okay, you can get your own interpreter, or we're going to provide you with this guy. We're just going to provide you with this gentleman that is going to be your, or lady that's going to be your interpreter from here on out. I mean, we'll bend a little bit for you, but we're not going to break. We're going to make sure that we got our finger on this thing too.
And I wonder how that'll affect the Dodgers from an off the field standpoint.
I don't know. I mean, do you think it would affect them all that much?
I don't know. I mean, I look back at this past year, and the Cardinals had a lot of drama that surrounded the team, and who knows if that actually was the difference in them having a bad season. But I mean, it's not a great way to start off the 2024 campaign.
And think about where you're at and the media surrounding him right now.
Oh yeah.
And this story breaks as they're playing over in Korea. And then you think about the throng of media that follows him anyway, from the Japan media, those in Korea, those overseas that follow him to watch him, and his every move, everything that he says is documented. I mean, it's 4 or 5 rows deep of media members, all just to see what he has to say. I mean, this thing breaks, it could be a distraction, at least initially.
I hope it is, for the Cardinals' sake.
Yeah, so Bob Nightingale is the one that reported that?
Bob Nightingale was the one with the tweet that we read. I'm sure there's other people that are dialed into it, but that was per the LA Times. So if you want to believe the LA Times, you can, but it looks like this is an interesting development, to say the least.
All right, biggest question of the day. What do we have, Marshy?
All right, so let's go back to some of our favorite sports villains. That seemed to be quite the topic that people wanted to bring their thoughts to the Air Comfort Service text line.
And in particular, it was baseball.
Baseball, yes. There were 2 names that we did not mention that I wanted to mention from the text line that are completely correct, and that would be Carlos Zambrano and Aramis Ramirez with the Chicago Cubs.
Aramis Ramirez was so interesting because when he was with Pittsburgh, he was a guy. He's just a guy you could pitch to him. He looked kind of sloppy, didn't play great. They always said that this guy's got talent, but it never really came out until they made that big deal. And I think Randall Simon was in that deal. Kenny Lofton was in that deal. Aramis Ramirez shows up in Chicago and then bursts onto the scene. He was outstanding at that point. Yasiel Puig would be somebody that I think about. Yasiel Puig would be one that is... You know, he's a villain. He was a villain for a lot of the league.
I remember, I think it was the 2013 playoffs when that guy could not make contact with the baseball. I think he struck out like upwards of like 10 times in a row.
Yes.
That was fantastic. I love seeing that. But also, I really enjoyed what he brought to the game, the antics that he had. I wonder if he was one of the pioneers of like this modern day age of players doing whatever the hell they wanted to do in the field.
And you didn't stop watching.
No.
He came up. You were going to see what he could do.
Yeah.
There was a base hit to right, runner at second. He had a cannon for an arm.
He did.
So he was fun to watch. He could run. He was a big man. There's guys like that. This one was kind of interesting. Jeffrey Leonard. And if you're old enough to remember Jeffrey Leonard, he was one flap down. He was with the San Francisco Giants, late 80s. Cardinals-Giants rivalry was great. That's one that comes to mind for sure, Jeffrey Leonard.
Are there any, and you mentioned this before, how from a different fan base perspective, guys like Albert, guys like Roland, Edmonds, they were all villains to other teams. Are there any other players throughout Cardinals history that would probably be a villain? I would think that Bob Gibson is probably in that conversation.
Intimidating for sure.
Yes.
Maybe Al Raboski, my buddy. You know, he was the mad Hungarian out there. He's going to drive you crazy, and he also was very good. In the mid-'70s, he was the fireman of the year. That's somebody that comes to mind. You're not going to say Ozzie. Ozzie was beloved, and it seemed like he was beloved nationwide. Recent memory, just a lot of those Cardinal teams under Tony La Russa, man, they just they were hated by a lot of other fan bases.
I feel like Yachty's probably at least in the top 5.
Absolutely. I'd say Albert. Albert was there too. That menacing look that he had, hitting home runs, kind of the slow start out of the box when he'd hit a home run. Jack Clark against Tom Niedenfuhr. That's one. Yep.
We have Albert Bell from the 314. I believe that's the guy that was running the second base and decided to become a linebacker.
He trucked Fernando Vina. Vina was playing for the Milwaukee Brewers, and Albert just came in and just rolled him. And Vina picked up his hat and was kind of like, what's going on here? You remember that? He's like, what are you doing? He was in the baseline, I guess, but Albert kind of, the straight line to second was, there was a little deviation in there to make sure that he got Fernando Vina, and knocked him right on his rear.
What do you say to that guy, though? Like, what are you going to pick a fight with him? Especially if you're Fernando Vina. The size difference is not even close.
You get up and you say, what are you doing? And then you just kind of walk away. And maybe it gets taken care of by your pitcher. Next time he comes up, takes one in the ribs at least. But, what do you say? Like, what the hell are you doing, man?
I don't know if I'd say anything.
Yeah.
I would just be like, oh, okay. I'll try and beat you on the field.
We're getting a lot of Chris Carpenter in there.
I like it.
Yeah.
Chris, he would...
Intensity.
He would yell at players if they got a base hit.
Scream at them. Yes. He'd scream at guys if they got a base hit.
I love that.
Oh, man. He was so much fun to watch. There's so many of those guys on those teams that I enjoyed.
I don't know if you have that type of pitcher in Major League Baseball anymore.
Just thinking that.
And I'm not talking about, like, Lance Lynn, right? He's the guy that will probably yell at you. You know, he's could give you the bird, and, he's going to get kicked out of the game. And like we saw in spring training, and have a funny comment and whatnot. But I'm talking about the guy that is going to put his head down. He's going to give you 8 to 9 innings.
Oh, that guy?
Of that, he's a dog. Chris Carpenter was a dog.
I don't know if that's the way the game is played anymore, though.
I hate that.
And he's not that far removed from playing, but you just don't have guys give you 8 or 9 innings. Verlander would do that even just a few years ago, but there's not many. There's not. When it doesn't roll off your tongue, then man, that's a era gone by. You just don't see it anymore.
I just feel like it's bad for baseball. I know there's a lot of people that really like the offense and whatnot, and I'm sure there's a section of fan bases that really just enjoy great pitching.
I thought of one. Madison Bumgarner back in the day.
Oh, yes.
So he's not far removed.
No, he's not.
He had a little bit of that. You get a base hit, he'd scream at you. Yep. Or if you hit a home run, if you didn't put your head down and run, semi-quickly around the bases, he'd be jawing at you. Max Scherzer did that a little bit too.
He did, and he still has a little bit of that in him. Another name that came up for villains is Pedro Martinez.
Yeah. When he threw down Don Zimmer. You can't throw him down to that.
I saw that video the other day, actually, which is actually funny that we were just talking about the Red Sox and Yankees rivalry the other day. That was another element to that early 2000s rivalry. It was mean.
Roger Clemens. He's throwing high and tight on guys.
Oh, yeah.
Threw high and tight on Manny a few times.
I don't know if that one was close. And speaking of Tim McCarver on that call, that's not even close.
That's right. Johnny Cueto would be the guy that comes to mind for a lot of Cardinal fans, I would think.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think just that Reds team in general, and, if we want to bring it back to the Cardinals, I think now, though, I don't know what team, other than the Cubs, they're obviously the correct answer here, but I don't know if the Cardinals have that rivalry feel anymore with any of the NL Central teams. I mean, you had the Pirates in the early 2010s, the late 2000s you had, going into the 2010, 2011 was the Reds.
You still don't think the Cubs? I think it's always there. It's underlying
there.
Factor of it.
But I'm thinking of other teams. It seems like it's very cyclical. Like Houston was the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Then it was, then it was the Reds, and then it was the Brewers in 2011 with Nyjer Morgan, and then then it was the Pirates, and then I guess it was the Cubs and when they were making their run.
I mean, Schwarber put one on top of the scoreboard against Kevin Segrist.
Oh man,
yeah. That rivalry, I don't care how bad the teams are. Mm-hmm. I still think it's always there, and it's a fun rivalry. But when they're both good, there's an edge to it.
I think 2 years ago when Albert was here, I think we got a little bit more of that edge because he was a name that Cubs fans know and they hate. Right, like the 1-0.
His numbers against the Cubs are awesome.
One of my favorite games of that year was the 1-0 game that Albert hits the home run and Jordan Montgomery gets the Greg Maddux complete game.
That was at Wrigley.
That is that type of atmosphere that I want to be a part of.
I think his home run against the Cubs in the final plate appearance ever against the Chicago Cubs.
Another great one.
Pinch hit 2-run homer.
Yep.
I mean, that was awesome too. And then he had I can't remember, I guess that home run that day, the pitch was above his head. Mm-hmm. Remember how he hit that thing? It hit it into the bleachers and left. I mean, everything he was hitting in that second half was incredible. A rocket somewhere. It's 5:16. We're running out of time because at 5:30 we have NCAA men's basketball. We've got Montana State and Grambling. We have Boise State and Colorado. And all that is coming up as we go to next 3 Stars of the Day, criticisms and compliments on 101 ESPN.
I'm Andrew Marsh. It's time for a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues lost last night to the Colorado Avalanche. We talked about last night's game with our Blues insider from The Athletic, Jeremy Rutherford. If you missed that interview, make sure you go to 101ESPN.com or check out the free 101 mobile app. Just head to the podcast page. You'll find all of our interviews and full shows there. And it's all brought to you by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. The Blues will be back in action tomorrow, taking on the Ottawa Senators. Pregame starts at 5. Puck drop is at 6, and you can catch all the action right here on 101 ESPN. Tonight, once we get off the show, we'll have the first 4 as Grambling takes on Montana State. That tip-off, or the pregame starts at 5:30, and then after that, Colorado going up against Boise State. We have our 3 stars of the day, criticisms and compliments. That's coming your way next right here in the Fast Lane. I'm Andrew Marsh, and this SportsCenter update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is the
Fast Lane with Marshy. I'm Danny Mack. Again, Jamie Rivers traveling with the Blues. Anthony Stalter on vacation. Carey Davis a little bit under the weather. He'll be with you hopefully tomorrow. And Marshy, what do we got as we wrap things up?
Yeah, we did get a text going back to the rivalry conversation from the 314. I think rivalries are harder to find now because the players don't seem as into it. You need the right characters in both teams.
That's 100% right.
I completely agree.
I also think by them sharing the same agents.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys work out together. They're with each other in the offseason. As much, too, as free agency has changed things, jumping from team to team.
Mm-hmm.
So you were with these guys just a year ago. You know, some players are going to say, I'm not, you know, the rivalry then is subdued because of that. I think that's all part of it.
I agree. I think, and this goes back to having characters and personality. Maybe we don't see that as much here in St. Louis because we don't have those type of players that are like giving off that type of energy.
What about Contreras?
Contreras is the one guy that I will say.
Yeah.
And Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn, I'm sure, will be part of some mix-ups throughout the year, which I'm excited to see.
I love seeing it.
Yeah. Like Lars Nootbaar has personality, but he's not like a...
He's not a get-in-your-face kind of guy.
He's not that type of person.
No, not at all.
So... so I think that this texter is absolutely right.
All right, we got criticisms and compliments. We got 3 stars of the day. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, let's go to the 618. You guys have a great show. Well done. Give shout out to Carey to get better.
Well, if you've heard him on the spots, his commercials, not great.
No,
he hasn't been great. Carey was in for about 45 minutes yesterday, and we said, hey, man, go home, go relax, get better. He came in today to work, and then it wasn't going all that well, and he recorded a few spots and got out of here. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully he'll be with you tomorrow and a member of the Fast Lane tomorrow. I think Randy is going to fill in on the Fast Lane tomorrow and Friday.
Yes, so we'll be at Cyberg's. We'll be at Cyberg's tomorrow in Illinois, and then on Friday we'll be at Helen Fitzgerald's. So it should be a fun next 2 days, and hopefully Carey's voice is back to normal.
I'm going to give you the number 1 star, bro.
Me?
Yeah, I'm giving you the number 1 star.
Well, I appreciate that, Dan.
You make it easy. Not always easy to come in and just say, all right, you got 3 hours of radio to go, but you come up with great topics. You make it fun to work with you. So always great to be back with you on the Fast Lane. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for stepping in these past 3 days. I'll give you the 2nd star of the day. And our 3rd star of the day, we got to give a shout out to the Snake Pit. They actually got me a birthday present, and Brian in particular. So thank you to the Snake Pit. I got a card, a nice little bag, and some screwball because I'm a screwball myself. So.
Did you really get it? It showed up here at the station?
It's at the show, or it's right here. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. All right, Marshy, good job, my man. Thanks.
Thank you.
NCAA tournament is coming up, and as Anthony would say, see ya.